Hello, hello. Wonderful to see you, everybody. My name's Mark Reed, and welcome to the first episode on Mark Reed Atheism of Debate Dissection. We are going to be doing an autopsy on one of the debates from one of my favorite channels, Modern Day Debate, which streamed the other day. I did do an after show, which was really good. I really enjoyed talking to everybody after the debate, and I did love this one as it was kind of a mixed bag of good points, really weird stuff coming from the creationist side, and of course Jen, the highlight of any debate, because I didn't understand her points, but they certainly made an impact. I'll put it that way. It's so good to see everybody. Hello, Hill Hugger. Hello, Az. Hello, Spooky. Hello, everybody. So just to give you an update, I decided to do this after working with Ember, and I did a debate review with them, and it was a great time, and I really enjoyed myself. So full credit to Ember for who is a debater on this debate, who is. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. So I sort of edited down a debate myself, and it is a lot more work than you would expect, like really. And so I've heard this debate. This is going to be the third time I've heard it, which is sometimes I wonder where my life has gone, but I hope to have a fun time the third time round, and it'll make it all worth it. So yeah, so Mr. Reed, and this is the thing, like this is I don't know where my mind threw this up. It's sort of a surgery themed dissection at the moment. So for some reason surgeons are called Mr. And not doctor. So I don't claim to be a doctor. But the funny thing is I had to look up why are they called Mr. Like why aren't they called a doctor? So I looked it up, and apparently it's because surgeons used to also be barbers. So that is why I am Mr. Reed and not Dr. Reed, because apparently surgeons were trained in barbershops, which is horrifying, like sort of the state of medicine. And welcome, Ember. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming. It's just the start. So excellent timing. Excellent timing, my friend.
One does one's best.
Yeah, and so you were one of the debaters in here. I have chopped it down. It's sort of about half an hour, just a couple of minutes over half an hour. But so I've really chopped down a lot, and just focused on to be honest, the really bizarre arguments coming out from the other side, because I honestly don't know which was more bizarre to me, TRock or Jen. I actually think Jen did a better job, to be honest with you, which is because the reason why I think that is because I didn't understand Jen's argument. I understood TRock's, and he was just wrong on so many counts of things, so yeah.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit in the live stream just now.
Right.
How, despite the fact that I went out of my way to present an argument for the creationists that deals with present day observable stuff, TRock was still, coelacanth and Tiktaalik and things like that. It's sort of the inverse of the way we sometimes address apologists. Like they say, we've got this book that's totally infallible, and then we go, well, what about this one contradiction? Right. Technically, it's nitpicking, but if you're going to say it's infallible, there shouldn't be one error. And then they turn around
absolutely.
And do the exact same thing with evolution, except, being science, of course there are going to be anomalous data points.
Sure. And of course, everything's fallible in science.
Mm-hmm.
No, we don't make proclamations of absolute truth. Like they make proclamations of an absolute truth, like this is set in stone, but we don't. We create models that are the best thing we've got to describe reality, and they're always tentative. They're always up for challenge. They're always up to be wrong. because
Yeah,
that's
in
the only
fact,
way we get
we
better.
look forward to it. Like,
Yeah, because
how
then we
much of
can.
an advance did we get when general relativity overthrew Newton?
Right,
We learned
right.
so much. We love that shit.
Absolutely. Yeah. Bring it on. Criticize away. But it's sort of and legitimate criticisms are, absolutely fair game. But I think my problem with what the creationists often do is it's not legitimate criticism. It's very so sort of logical straw men, and they misrepresent the science and they misrepresent facts, kind of thing. One thing that really was annoying me was sort of TRock saying that's factually incorrect, and it's just like, no, that isn't factually incorrect. That's yeah.
Yeah, and the
So how were
way.
your? Sorry, go ahead, Amber.
Oh, all right. Yeah, it kept bugging me how he kept like trying to veer off into like planetary magnetic fields and whatnot, and I'm like, my dude, what are we doing here?
Right. So look, I can kind of understand that, because basically, and maybe we should watch the thing, because a lot of it was testable predictions. So I think he
Mm.
was trying to argue for creationism, because I think he was really triggered because TJump at one point said, you don't have any predictions. You have nothing. You haven't made any testable predictions, kind of thing.
Mm.
And I think he was sort of like, no, creationism has done testable predictions. This one guy did this thing where he basically got lucky on one planet. Like, seriously, if you apply his methodology, it just doesn't work for everything. But he
And
got very, very close on one planet.
it's a pattern of behavior with that guy. Like I tried to mention in the debate, I am familiar with his work. I did a video specifically on the creationist problem of how
Mm,
the Earth is supposedly young, but we can see light from stars billions of light years away. So
right,
the
right.
starlight is older than the universe. That same physicist, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. He'll be Jim for now. Jim had this idea to solve the starlight problem, that basically the earth was created and then God dropped it into a black hole so that time passed while earth was on pause, and then
Mhm.
when the time was right brought earth out of the black hole. And I'm like, are you kidding me? That's
Yeah,
your solution?
because nothing comes out of a black hole. If you're going to use magic and miracles to sort of get things done, why not just say it was magic that stopped? Because they want to appeal to physics, because that works. We know that works. That can be demonstrably proved to be effective and
Mm-hmm.
and an accurate description. So this is what confuses me. They sort of appeal to physics, and then in order to make the physics work, they have to insert magic. Why didn't you just go to magic in the first place? Like, why is
Mm-hmm.
God bothering obeying the laws of physics when he can just magic it away? But in order to give it some kind of credibility, it's like, oh, we've got to have the physics in there somewhere. Was that Spooky Bedhair says, was that scientist Kent Hovind? I love you, Spooky. You have the best sense of humor. Um, well, he does have a lab coat. Okay, well, I did want to. I'm so glad you're here, Amber. I did want to ask you, mate. How did you feel about how you did in the debate? What are your feelings on it?
Overall, pretty well. I feel like I could have been more assertive since T Jump was there. Honestly, I don't know how I feel about T Jump, but the dude definitely has mad philosopher skills, and he's done so many debates. So I was sort of inclined to follow his lead whenever he wanted to assert himself.
Yeah.
So I feel like I could be more assertive in the future, but I think I did all right.
No, I think you did fantastic, Amber. That was your first debate, wasn't it?
Hmm.
Yeah, that is fantastic, mate. I cannot emphasize that enough. Honestly, that was a fantastic first debate performance. No joke. It like, you were logical. You had good arguments. You backed them up. You were, you didn't get distracted by some of the things going on. Absolutely fantastic performance. I don't want to take anything away. Could you have been more assertive? I think, you know what? I don't know. I think that TJump, I mean, he is a absolutely seasoned debater, and I totally understand you following his lead. If it was me, I would probably let the new person sort of take the lead a little bit during the debate. I think he kind of did that,
Yeah,
but
I tend to agree. When we started the open
mm,
discussion, he was just quiet, and I was like, well, this is
yeah,
awkward, but whatever. And then I just, started questions on Jen. I was really proud of how I handled Jen because I just
yes,
asked open ended questions and
hmm
let her reveal what she believes and make
yes.
it clear to the audience what the situation is. And I'm like, okay, let's put a pin in that and let's talk to TRock now, you know?
Oh, we've had our first super chat. Thank you so much, Jake Nelson, for $10. Thank you so much, Jake. That's awesome, mate. I really appreciate it. Emma did awesome for this. I totally agree. I absolutely agree. I would never have picked that as your first debate. I would have said you'd done at least half a dozen already. And some parts where you just went, okay, I'm not following Jen down that rabbit hole because it will go forever. You just said, okay, I'll
Mhm.
stew on that for a little bit. I absolutely adored that because you just went, okay, that's a perspective. I can put that to one side. Now let's focus on the actual topic of the debate, evolution,
Hmm. Hmm.
which, and Jen, love her. She was trying to keep on topic as much as possible. She has a very unique perspective that can sort of go down into very, very, very deep sort of metaphysics kind of thing, and some very heavy, maths orientated stuff. So I think you did fantastic. So yeah, I am very, very happy. Who is this? It's Ember. I really want to call you M because Australians are lazy and we always do like one syllable if we can get away with it. You know,
That tracks, I suppose. I've never had somebody try to shorten my name. That's a new thing. I
you,
mean,
you, you
with
don't
my
know many
birth name, my
Australians, do you?
parents did it all the time, but
Right,
yeah.
right, right. You don't know many Australians, do you? We're incredibly like Australians are weird. If we've got like multiple syllable stuff, we'll shorten it. If it's one syllable, we'll lengthen it. So it's
Interesting. But yeah,
Davo.
you're technically the second Australian that I've ever directly spoken to.
Oh,
There's
really? Oh,
Yeah, I've got a third now. Someone dropped by the live stream.
nice.
How it's a version of Cthulhu and it's got P in it. But again, I am so bad with names, so my apologies. But yeah, join the
Is
live
it
stream towards the very end.
P Buthu or something? P
Along those
P
lines, yes.
Bulu?
Yeah,
Yeah. He not drops by Amy's occasionally. Yeah. Nice guy.
yeah.
But I'll get the video up, and we can maybe. I do like the this format, so I'll go for this one. But thanks for everyone for joining me, and I hope it okay. And as I was saying, I sort of credit you with me doing this because I such enjoyed our other review, Ems. I thought it was fantastic, and no, I really and genuinely enjoyed it. So I decided to do it as well. So I basically stole this concept off you. I won't lie. I basically stole it off you, but I would love to do more of this with you, and even partner up for some debates.
Mhm.
I think if you're doing debates, your next one you should be, by yourself, taking the reins. Were you scared at all going in? Was it sort of frightening going
Oh
in,
no,
or
not
were
at
you?
all. But
No,
in fairness, I've been doing performance type stuff pretty much my entire life. Like
right,
in junior
right,
high, I joined community theater, and
yeah,
I was in literally every extracurricular I could do, and many of them involved a lot of public speaking. I started joining community organizations as soon as I hit the age criteria. So being in front of people and presenting arguments,
mm,
cases, even unpopular ones. One of my favorite things about the debate team in high school was the ability to do the devil's advocate thing, to present a
right,
point that you do not believe in with
yes.
everybody understanding that you're arguing because it's your job and you don't necessarily hold that view. That's a thing I don't think you could get away with on the internet because if you argue in favor of something, people are going to be like, oh, you must believe that then. But it helps a lot in understanding the other side's point of view so you can communicate better.
Right, I don't think that's necessarily the case. I had a stream recently with James Apperson, or I just dropped into his room kind of thing. And I think I did sort of a devil's advocate position, sort of saying, like, he was bringing up points. And I said, well, the creationists would say this kind of thing. So I think I've got enough experience in the sphere to know what some of the objections that are going to be raised are. And I think it's, if you frame it as, well, the the opposite, or the theist might say something like this kind of thing. I think if you frame it that way, it's perfectly fine. Or maybe he just thinks I'm carrying a flag for the theist. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm carrying a torch for the theist. I don't know. Second super chat for the night, Squid Super Hunk. You are a gorgeous cephalopod. For $10. I would have loved to hear more from Ember in general. Same. TJump will dominate if you give him a chance, and I say that lovingly as one of his mods, but Ember, you did great. Absolutely. Yeah, he will.
Thank you.
He definitely will. It's sort of his personality, and he's just done, like, his debate count is actually frightening. Like, frightening. Something like 700 or something. It was really funny when Hoven sort of pressed him on how many he'd done, because Hoven wants to beat good old Gish, who did 300 and something debate. So he's like, oh, I'm up to 280 something. I can't remember exactly what he said, but TJump was like, yeah, according to my count on my YouTube, it's like 700 and something. And his face just fell, just it was great to see him.
Took his candy away.
Right. And I mean, TJump doesn't really care. He's just like, yeah, it's just been this many, but Hoven cares so much, and like, who cares? Like, why do you care? But yeah, no, Ember, you did great. Absolutely.
Well, thank you.
So I'll start this running, and we'll just go through it. Please tell me you can hear sound.
I'm not hearing it.
I probably didn't enable the sound. Let me try again, because I always don't click the share audio thingo. Yeah, that's the way.
This is the way. I haven't watched Mandalorian, but I hear people say it all the time.
Okay, well, let me know if there's any problems, but hopefully I've got...
on trial, and we are starting right now.
I just put this in because I mean, James looks super slick. I mean, what can you say? Like, seriously, I don't know why he got dressed up from this. Maybe he came from like a conference or something. But
actually, I can shed a little bit of insight. I don't know why he dressed up specifically for this debate, but he was like messing with his tie, and like he was suiting up backstage as we were waiting for Tom to join the call. He just kept getting fancier and fancier while we waited for Tom.
Wow. What? It was the 100K sub. Yeah, he hit 100K recently.
That's
so
right.
Big congratulations to James. He's growing.
He's going to have a new play button on the way.
Well, a lot of people give him shade. He definitely has worked hard. I will take nothing away from him. He's worked hard. He's given me a chance. He's given a lot of new people a chance. I don't have anything against James and what he's doing. I think he's one of the most neutral moderators that I've seen. I would never guess that he's actually a theist, like, ever. He does not convey that at all, but he doesn't convey atheism. I think that he mentioned that during the post show. Yeah, so I was doing an after show, Squid, so I probably missed it. My apologies, but thanks for letting me know. That's great. Like, congratulations to James. Absolutely.
Yeah, I did the same thing. As soon as he ended the call, I just jumped over here for the after show. I was like, I want to hang out with my friends.
That was good. Yeah, absolutely. I usually do hang around and watch the after show from James. He's definitely does a great, a great thing. Yeah, thanks, Titan. I get you, mate. I get you. So this is the
hallmark of the theory is its ability to make predictions.
So so TJump. I dislike personally the recorded presentations. I don't like them. I think they're they separate you from the audience when you've got to make that connection. You've got to be able to talk to them. I think that if, like, people that are just it's like the teacher just playing a video for the students. It just disconnects you, in my opinion. So I personally don't like it. And I dislike it when sort of flat earthers just play their videos kind of thing. So I think in debate, but I'm going to give him a pass for this one because I understand it. He was like last minute kind of thing. So
yeah, that's pretty much exactly what happened backstage. Is he mentioned that he literally had no time to prepare because he just got word to come in like 5 minutes before. Is it okay if I play this Jackson Wheat video? And James is like, oh, well, what about copyright? And TJump's like, well, don't worry. First of all, it's Jackson Wheat. He's cool with people using his stuff. And second, it's going to be at like 3 times speed. And the other two didn't really have an opinion. I'm like, I guess I'm cool with it, but I'm probably biased because he's technically on my side. I kind of, but James was like, I've been getting a lot of flack from people for letting people play videos like this, but we don't really have a lot of options. There's no time. Let's just go with it this time.
Last minute. Yeah. So, I'm going to give him a pass on that because, stepping into a debate like evolution with no prep whatsoever is pretty intense, and you have no presentation. So I totally get it. Playing it at 3 times speed was annoying as
giving out an rationalization to explain away data that contradicts a particular model.
Yeah, I didn't like it.
The
audience really didn't like it.
Yeah, I didn't speed this up, by the way, people. This is normal speed. Okay,
yeah, that's the speed that TJump played it at.
Yeah, so I'll put it down to half speed.
Not every model can be used to make accurate predictions about future data. If the evolution of all organisms from a set of common ancestors is true, then we should be able to test that as it happens.
So that was testable predictions, and both of you sort of, that was the crux of your argument with testable predictions, which is, absolutely fair. Scientific method, testable predictions are where it's at. Absolutely great. I don't disagree with anything.
Yeah, all right.
Have you got anything
One
to add?
second, I will be right back.
Yeah, sure. I'll hold it here and entertain the people with my sparkling repartee. I hope I pronounced that right, or I'm going to sound very foolish. While we're having this break and waiting for Ember, I do have some things coming. I did promise to work on some emojis and things over the weekend, which I did do. I probably will be opening up memberships on Wednesday when I do my aimbot stream. I just want to put out there, look, I working on emojis and art for the artistically challenged like me, and believe me, I am artistically challenged, is rough. And I put together some stuff. I hope you do like it, but I will be releasing those on Wednesday and opening up memberships for everybody. So I'm just letting you know. Well, I'm just letting you know that I did keep my promise of working on the emojis. I just have one more to do up, and then, I'm off and running. And hopefully we can have some fun with the emojis that I've drawn up out of my weird and twisted imagination. So
sweet.
Yeah.
I had to run and grab my tie. I almost never wear my tie, but Jake mentioned that a half Windsor is weak and a double Windsor is superior. Well, this is what I wear. It's my Trinity knot. I keep it pre-tied because I so rarely wear a tie. I don't want to mess with it. But yeah,
Trinity knot.
That's
yeah,
what
I'm a double Windsor man all the way. Who said that? Jake. Jake, 100% correct. Double Windsor is where it's at. Like, you cannot do single Windsor. That is a weak knot for weak people. No, I'm joking. It is not the knot that I use. Like,
yeah, I never even button my top button unless it's like a super formal occasion, which is why I keep that because it just chokes. My triple chin.
Well, I mean,
gets in the way,
wore a tie for years and years and years, and once you've done that, you any opportunity not to wear a tie. Like, I will not wear a tie unless I have to. Some people really find suiting up to be, occasionally I like it, but it's just the tie that annoys me. I after having to tie a tie, for years and years and years. And that was a super chat that came in. I'm so sorry, Jake. Jake Nelson with $10. Yeah, no, Jake, 100% right. I'm on board, mate. Single Windsors are weak. Double Windsors are the only way to establish power. I disagree with the second part. I think that Trinity knot is pretty, you know, it's putting something out there. It's speaking to me. I've seen those and people tying them online. I've never tried to tie one, so you're way ahead of me.
Yeah, I just like how it looks, because like ties, I've never been a big fan of ties. They're there. They don't seem to really have a purpose, and the way the knots are always so weird. But the way that one divides into three and yet still has symmetry, that kind of appeals to me aesthetically.
Yeah. Well, I like the aesthetic of ties. Don't get me wrong. I do like, you know, if you are suited up and you have the tie and everything, you do look good. It does look good. So aesthetically, yes. I mean, practically, they're useless. Absolutely. I won't completely dismiss the value of aesthetics, though, of things looking good. You know, I'm on board with that. I'm good with that. I think that, you know, accessorizing can be good. But yeah, practically concerned, yeah, of course it's useless.
Well,
One
I
of the
mean,
most
they do have
Except
some
maybe,
uses.
well, maybe you could use it as a napkin if you're desperate or something, you know. Like just... Oh, hey, I got one for you. A tourniquet. Checkmate, Ems. Checkmate. Nice.
Yep,
Emergency
for sure.
tourniquet.
In case
famous
of emergency.
Sorry, what was that?
In case of emergency.
In case of emergency, yeah. Like, I mean, Australia is the shark bite capital of the world, you know. So you got to have emergency tourniquets.
A pollinating insect that possessed a proboscis with an absurd length that could reach down inside the flower of a peculiar species of orchid from Madagascar that held its nectar deep inside a long tube. This insect was eventually found, a moth called xanthopan. Darwin also observed that the
Sorry, Jake is sending in another. Thank you so much, Jake. I really appreciate it, mate. Don't bankrupt yourself or anything, seriously. But thank you so much for your next super chat. $10 again. The double Windsor is the way to go. So you're doubling down on the double Windsor to make it a quadruple Windsor. That's beautiful, man. Like, no, I'm on board. Double Windsor is the way, because it looks good. It doesn't come loose, and it's easy to do. Like, it's only one more like hitch on the single Windsor. Like, it's very easy. So I have to agree. I don't know why people wouldn't double Windsor if they're gonna do it. If you're there doing a single anyway, just double up. Right?
the bones inside the wings of birds looked like they were fingers that got fused together. So he predicted that a fossil of an ancient bird with separate fingers would be found one day. This ended up being Archaeopteryx. The first specimen was discovered just 2 years after the publication of Darwin's book on the origin of species.
So a lot of it is just testable predictions we've come up with. Like, I'm just sort of, all of them valid, all of them testable predictions, just nothing surprising there. You go into some testable predictions as well, and that's a bit later. But he goes on to talk about sort of, I mean, he's got the chromosome 2 fusion on the end there.
Yeah, I wish that had come up a little bit more, because that's such a strong thing, because it relates to humans specifically, not just evolution in general. But alas, we can't cover all the bases.
Well, no, and I think as feedback, if you're in a team one where there's 2 people and you have very limited time, I think that, and this is just my personal opinion, that this sort of bringing up multiple subjects isn't as impactful as focusing on just 1 or 2 very specific examples. And I can sort of apply that to your presentation as well, Ember. That a lot of different points were brought up, and I don't know. I just feel that they lack impact. If that happens, I personally will generally focus on 1 or 2 very specific things and get really deep into them, or at least, you know, beyond surface value, because this is sort of just reiterating things that the audience kind of already aware of, and they'll either reject or accept depending on their stance. But, you know, that's a personal nitpick. I do find that a lot of people do it in debates. They bring up too many points, and none of them are actually explored decently. But I think the crux of both of yours was testable predictions, and I'm glad that you pivoted to that afterwards kind of thing. So you sort of went, okay, well, let's focus on this one thing. So I think that was good. But I would have preferred, and again, a lot of this is sort of you not being able to communicate with your partner before the debate. So if he covers, if he does testable predictions and, the other person does chromosome 2 fusion or, ERVs or some sort of, or the genetic sequence of animal, you can both do one topic or one or two topics. And then, you've got 4 topics that are really, really nailed kind of thing, rather than lots of little topics that don't have the same impact.
Yeah, I was kind of planning for the original person who dropped out last second. Well, second to last second, because Snake was going to come on, and then TJump replaced Snake. But the original person from before, who was whatever, in any case, was another new person who had no idea what was going on. So, like, the closest I could get to strategizing with them was to say, okay, I'm doing opposition research. I've seen TRock is a dyed-in-the-wool creationist. I also see Jen is not a creationist and doesn't really like that. So maybe a divide and conquer strategy would be a good way to go. Like, if we start hammering TRock on the facts of creationism, as it were, Jen can't follow, and then the team is divided. But then that person had to drop out, and I'm like, oh no. So yeah, I did bring too much to the table, most certainly. But I was trying to provide like an array of topics they're welcome to choose from, while still keeping it controlled in the scope of things, rather than a lot of evolution debates get way off into the weeds about, the specific genetic sequence of one specific sample that no one in the audience has ever heard of, and they all fall asleep.
That's true, yeah. Well, that's true, yeah. And that's where you've sort of got to drag it back from that real in-depth things to how does this apply to the
ultimately,
point that I'm trying to make.
It's more about performance than the actual facts, as weird as that is to say. Because if you lose the audience, it doesn't matter what you're saying.
Right. No, I do see your point. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that, and plus TJump's style, and I've got no problem with this, but his style isn't to generally attack. He generally will sit and wait for somebody else to bring up a point, and then he will sort of, or his opponent to say something that he disagrees with, and then he'll try to demolish that point. He's very good at it.
He's a trapdoor spider of debate.
Right. He sort of just grabs that and absolutely crushes it. I personally would prefer him to bring up more points, to make more sort of, to be more assertive as it comes to points. But, he's a seasoned debater. I can't imagine what I'd be like if I got to that amount of debates that he's done. I probably wouldn't bring up points either. I'd probably said everything already. You know what I mean? Like, just bring it on, and I'll just refute everything you've got to say and debunk it. So, but I do like chromosome 2 fusion. I think it's,
The prevalence of mutations in organisms even allows researchers to...
Yeah, so we went on about mutations kind of thing, and I'm so sorry for the sound. This is not my fault. In fact,
the spectrum also matches when you look at the differences between humans and more distantly related apes like gorillas and orangutans, and matches when comparing differences between those other apes such as chimps and gorillas.
So that's genetic similarity, and this is what I'm talking about. Like, at the speed that he was playing it, none of that sunk into the audience. Like, it was just your pictures on the screen while something warbled in the background. I guess I paused here because I didn't realize he'd been through this. I saw the debate and I forgot that he went through this completely. The genetic similarities between apes, including humans. So
yeah, I honestly, I wish he would have just not done an opening, because it just, even knowing what he was going on about, I'm still catching like one word out of 3 when he played it at 3 times speed like that.
Right.
I'm like, right. Genome, yeah, chromosome, apes. Gotcha. With you so far. I'm
It's
just
too heavy a topic. It's too heavy to play at 3 times speed. He could have just done like the first, 3 points in the video at normal speed, and that would have been fine.
Very fertile.
Well, that's
we broke it.
So I gotta
it's
change
me
the
now.
speed back. yeah. This is Ember now. So I slowed it down. So now we've got to speed it up, or else Ember sounds like sounds like they've taken some horribly strong drugs.
Tonight's purposes, let's say science is not about being right. It's about building models that make it possible for us to understand reality, that make useful, accurate predictions. Evolution could be replaced tomorrow or in 100 years by a model that does better, like relativity has been. We've got Einstein's relativity replaced Newton's, which replaced Galileo's. That's our evolution of ideas, if you will.
So basically pretty simple. We have these models, they describe reality, they can be replaced, they're useful, they make testable predictions. Beautiful. Nothing, it's philosophy of science. Beautiful. Outlining what science is. Because I think that was necessary. You might not have known this, but Jen has a position where she kind of rejects science because it's based upon sort of Aristotelian principles kind of thing.
I've heard a little bit around that. She outright blurted a couple of times that's false, but then offered nothing to back it up.
Well, it's more that she rejects Western modes of thought kind of thing. So if you reject the whole... So as we were talking on the after show, if you reject sort of modal logic, like even the logical fundamentals, sort of so law of identity, law of non-contradiction, law of excluded middle, you're kind of rejecting all rationality. You're rejecting all inference that you can do. So to say, hey, we see these patterns and predict them into the future, you're kind of rejecting that, which is entirely what science is based upon. Like, there is nothing in science that is not based upon inference. It's induction. It is all induction. Yes, Spooky, it's that, Jim. I'm not sure what you want me to share, Beamsy, but send it to me on Discord, mate. All good. But beautiful philosophy of science. Everybody understands it. Clear, concise, very well done. The moths, I love these moths. The ones in England. If you're not aware of them, they basically had these speckled moths. They start up a whole load of coal plants in the area, and suddenly there was only black moths. Beautiful. Excellent example.
Yeah. Evolution itself, definition. Simple definition for tonight's purposes, a change in the heritable traits of a population over time. I included a couple of Darwin's moths there. We may get into the significance of them throughout the course of the night, maybe not, but they're pretty anyway. There are vast quantities of data support.
Oof, I need a lozenge.
A lozenge for what?
The me in the video. My voice is like phlegmy and warbly.
It's fine. It's fine.
Making me listen to myself. What kind of torture is that?
Yeah, no, I hate listening to myself as well. So I'm sorry to put you through that, Ember. Look, it's not all going to be you. Like, I didn't just focus on you as much as you'd like me to. It's not all about you, Ember. No, and good things. I love the wild mustard. That's beautiful.
Oh, it's my
artificial
favorite.
Selection. Yeah, artificial selection that we can come up with all these plants that we go. They're completely different. A cauliflower is not a cabbage. That's a completely different plant.
Mm-hmm. And that's honestly, that's one of my favorite achievements of all human history, of our great ancestors and everything, is the amazing freaking foods we've developed so that we can enjoy it today.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And it always reminds me of Ray Comfort, Banana Man, when he sort of says, "Oh, look at the banana! It's got a handle and it's easy to open and it's got its own lid and stuff." And it's like, yeah, that's because we made it like that. You idiot, Ray! You're an idiot. But and Jake again, he strikes again. Thank you so much, Jake Nelson. $10. Ember, you did a great knob of sitting back and presenting relevant facts. Yeah, I think you did a great knob as well,
Absolutely.
Ember.
And
Great knob.
one does
yeah.
one's best.
I'm
But
sure
thank
that
you.
is great job. Yeah, no, I'm sure it is great job. But yes, great knob. Yep. Oh yeah, the presentation. No, I got you, Jay. I got you, buddy. It's okay. I just, I mean, I will take any opportunity to say knob. Let's face it. I'm juvenile
Fair
and
enough.
childish. So, yeah. I think there's not enough knobs in the world. So, look, yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure why is Aaron Ra in the picture.
He was the representation of how humans, the fact that humans have only been around a short period of time, is itself proof of evolution. We didn't always exist, therefore, at some point we appeared. And
okay,
I figured
gotcha.
because he's such a big fan of evolution and biology and cladistics that he would be a great example for that. I just forgot to mention it on this slide, so I mentioned it on the next one instead.
I thought you were trying to trigger the creationists, to be honest with you. Like, just because they really don't like Aaron Ra. Because
I was just like, I need a human. Who better than Aaron?
Okay, so Aaron and Hovind have a long history of going back and forth and sort of, I mean, Aaron absolutely ripped Hovind a new one with his videos, basically just dismantled the man, which was amazing kind of thing. So I don't know if you know, but TJump sort of comes from that school. So it's possible that you really annoyed him with that picture. I don't know if that was intentional, but I
wouldn't hurt.
It wouldn't hurt, yeah. So bull terrier, yep. Change in inheritable traits, beautiful. Convergent evolution. You sort of explain that later in the debate. It doesn't explain it here, which would be one of my criticisms, but you got into it later into the debate, so no problem at all. Shark, ichthyosaur, and dolphin, yep, absolutely. Of course, the crabs, the way that they've developed, and crabs keep on being evolved into.
Evolution
For some reason,
loves crabs almost as much as I do.
Absolutely. It is one of those sort of biological patterns that is very efficient for what it needs to do. So evolution keeps throwing up crabs.
I have to admit that was a little bit of a cheat. Like I said, I was doing opposition research. Jen very kindly did a debate prep live stream the night before, and she went over her entire presentation's notes, and she said one of the points she wants to make sure to bring up and throw out to throw a monkey wrench in those evolutionists is carcinization, because you can't explain carcinization. So I said, you know what? I'm putting it in my presentation, because if I bring it up first and I explain it before she has a chance to say evolution can't explain it, I'm like halfway to winning the debate right there.
Sure, we can. It's a highly efficient body plan for a number of environments. It has protective. It basically has it's just an incredibly efficient way to do things essentially, and efficiency is one of the things that keeps getting thrown up in evolution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we humans, we're not very efficient, but we're also crazy freaking efficient. Like, I can't speak for anybody else, but I weigh a little bit over 100 pounds. And the fact that I can consume less than 1 pound of food per day and power not only my body, but these stupidly expensive brains we have, that's crazy. I'm not even photosynthesizing. I'm getting my nutrition secondhand.
What is that in kilos? I'm sorry, I don't understand pounds.
Yes. It is stupid American things. I haven't.
No, it's okay. It's 45
a scale in a while. I'm actually quite a bit more than that, but we don't need to get into the specifics.
Well, I mean, I'm a lot more than that. I'm probably so let's see, what am I in kilograms? Probably 112. So I'm 246 pounds. I don't know if that's a lot or not in your thing.
For someone gigantic like yourself, no, not really. At my healthiest, I was 180 pounds, and I'm
Right.
5'10" ish, depending on which convenience store I'm walking out of. That'd be what, 172 centimeters.
Hmm. Hmm. And here's the thing about humans: we have these traits, and people point to opposable thumb, and they'll point to large, cranium, and they'll point to the jaw with the ability to communicate. Now, vocal systems for communication, kind of thing. They'll point to all of these things. One of the weird things that humans can do that is naturally selected for is sweat through every pore on our skin.
That is weird now that you mention it.
Yeah, so a few animals can sweat through their skin. Horses lather. Dogs and wolves can't. They pant in order to get rid of heat. So they put out their tongue and they pant to release heat. But humans have this very, very unique ability to sweat very efficiently through their body pores. Now, what that allows us to do is, say, run for 8 hours straight. Marathon runners do it all the time, and run for hours and hours and hours on end, just jogging along. So why is that? Why do we have this ability? Like, where did God just decide he wanted us to have the ability to sweat? No, there's a very good reason. On the savannas, humans, and some humans still do, in fact, in the savannas of Africa, use something called persistence hunting. And what they basically do is just run in a moderate pace after prey, and the prey will outrun them. Now, what we do is we use our pattern detection to notice tracks, and we basically follow them and run. Now, they don't get time to have a proper rest and lie down before humans show up again. And so it has to run again. We keep doing that until literally they drop dead, or they just run out of stamina and they just cannot continue. It's called persistence hunting, and there are tribes in the Kalahari, I believe it is, that still do this. We can do that because of this ability to sweat through our skin. It cools off our body, and I mean, it's horrifying. Imagine you're a ibex or something, and a human comes along and you go, "Oh, I'm out of here," and run and go, "Oh, well, that was close," sit down, and then the humans show up again. And then, you run away, and then they keep showing up,
it's the Terminator movie.
Right, exactly. Like, it's just endless. And then, they can't possibly go on. There's actually a race where they race horses against humans over long distances.
I've heard of that,
England. Yeah, and you'd think horses again. Of course the horses are going to win.
For a while.
No.
Horses lead for a little while.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But over long distances, humans always, or not always, but in a vast majority of times, will beat a horse over endurance running. And that is incredible. You look at a horse and you go, "Oh, it's designed to outrun things." Actually, humans can outrun things over endurance stuff.
And we do the same thing mentally. Like, persistence is literally our entire adaptation. Like, we're actually not that great at inventing stuff. We're like Thomas Edison. We try the wrong thing 1,000 times and just keep at it until we finally figure it out.
Sure. And another super chat from Jake Nelson. Thank you so much, Jake. I really appreciate it, mate. For another $10. Ember, you did awesome. The torch is being passed. Could not agree more. I really cannot stress how well that Ember did in this debate. I'm talking about you like you're not here, Ems. I'm just like,
I'm like saying,
oh,
that 3 or 4 more
Ember
times,
guy.
and I might start to believe you.
Look, I'm so glad that you were calm, you were confident. My first debate, I was terrified. I'll be completely honest. I was absolutely terrified, but I haven't done any sort of stage work or anything like that, and I sort of have social anxiety issues. So I'm so glad that you were comfortable, because you did a fantastic job. Look, I'm going to start the video again, or else I'm just going to sit here and gush about you.
testable, observable predictions. We have used evolution to select for traits to get more from our agriculture. We get 2.5 times more.
Yeah, so this is just testable predictions, and you went on
Mhm.
about it. You know, it really did focus on that, and I did like that you used sort of, you know, well, it's funny because you used artificial selection as a point, and then Jen brought it up later saying that's not evolution.
A lot of people tend to go that way. It's nice to provoke it when you can, because you can be like,
Yeah,
did you pay attention to the definition from earlier? How it's a change in the heritable traits,
right,
the frequency over
right.
time. And
So did you
yeah.
know she was going to say that from the debate prep that she did, or did you just
No,
anticipate that up front?
she wound up scrambling her intro. Possibly the carcinization thing threw her, how I got to it first, but
Right.
I don't think so. I think she was just kind of a little scatterbrained and not like, I mean, honestly, if I were on her side, already uncomfortable with the position that I have to argue, not sure at all about my partner, and suddenly TJump is on the other side of the debate, I'd be a little shook too.
That's true. Yeah, no, I totally get that. And plus, yeah, I'll go into it later, but the match between TRock and Jen was not great. Like it just, I've partnered with Jen on Flat Earth before, and that was not a great partnership either. Like we just were not pulled. Like, you know, when you have a debate partnership, you've got to be pulling in the same direction, and you know, sort of like the bobsled, you know, the husky sled. If the dogs are going in different directions, it's going to be poor progress at best. So, yeah.
Other sciences depend on evolution, just to name a few: biochemistry, paleontology, genetics, anthropology, medical research, and more.
Yep, love it. Love it. We use it practically every day. We apply these principles, and it is incredibly useful. Look, there's two pillars of medicine, and one is evolution. The other, of course, is germ theory. I don't know how Jen feels about germ theory, but, you know, please, evolution is just as important as germ theory.
The crazy thing is that everybody already believes in evolution. Creationists, like in TJump's video, creationists have to accept that evolution exists. It's necessary to get from the kinds presented on Noah's Ark to the biological diversity we see today. The main complaint is the time scale, not the fact that it happens. Even science deniers have to admit that evolution can be and has been observed. Here's a few examples. Here's a single cellular organism developing into a multicellular organism in a lab. The next one over is a E. coli bacteria that developed the ability to digest citrate. There's so much in favor of it. It's crazy. So the challenge today is not to show the flaws in the model. Of course there are flaws. There are always going to be anomalous pieces of data in any system.
Yeah, good point. And although sort of when you have a subject like evolution on trial, I don't think you can challenge them to present a better system. The problem is that, you know, in that specific topic, don't get me wrong, if it was just evolution, you know, is evolution correct kind of thing, or is evolution true, you'd have a good point. But I think in sort of evolution on trial, you may not be able to say, hey, you've got to expect those nitpicks. You know, it's sort of
no,
the nature of the
I
beast.
completely admit that I was absolutely attempting to shift the burden of proof. It was a gambit, and I was pretty sure I'd get away with it, and I did.
No, it's fine. It's like I said, like a lot of the stuff with you and TJump are going to be very nitpicky from me. You know, like that's incredibly nitpicky. I totally understand.
Okay, I'm going to give a quick introduction for myself. I represent the young Earth creation side, and yes, it's a globe.
I'm glad he said that, because, you know, sometimes like the Venn diagram between sort of flat earthers and creationists is it overlaps a lot, unfortunately.
Yes, it sure does. And you know, I wish we could call it out as an irrelevancy, but sadly he's absolutely correct that by mentioning it in one sentence, he just cuts off that whole bag of nonsense so we can stay on
Right.
topic.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad he said that, but it saddens me that a young Earth creationist has to say that, because their arguments are almost identical. That's the thing. Like, their arguments are so similar. It's uncanny. This whole, well, you don't know this, or this doesn't make sense, or the science is actually wrong about this particular thing. Their arguments are so similar. It's uncanny, and you hear a lot of the same stuff. So I think that sort of in saying that, yeah, he probably had to be honest with you.
I'm gonna start with the nature of the fossil record, just because it happens to be some of the material that I had prepped, and it's pretty good. I don't think I'm going to share my screen or do a whole lot as far as that goes. I'm going to kind of talk my way through it a little bit, and if we wanted to look at some of the information, that's fine. The fossil record, so that's one of the big supporting arguments for evolution. It's a completely bogus argument to use it to support evolution, and the reason there are several reasons for that, but probably the most outstanding to me is there is zero apparent geological deep time in the fossil record, like absolutely zero.
So this is all just making claims, right? So he basically makes a claim that the fossil record is bogus, and then makes a claim that the deep time is bogus as well, is completely wrong. He doesn't actually explain why that's the case. He doesn't give any real evidence of why that's the case. He just says, hey, it's bogus.
Yeah.
Like, it
comes off as a rebuttal to a point nobody made.
Yes, absolutely. So if he said, hey, we know the Earth is young because of this, like this evidence, but what he's trying to do is pick holes in old Earth, sort of deep time, without actually showing anything in favor of his position. So I talk a lot about this when you're actually debating. You want to show things in favor of your position, not just things against the other person's position. And there's a big difference there. So if you'd noticed, Ember and TJump sort of made a lot of stuff that was for their kind of position. If he was making points against evolution, that would be fair enough. But instead, he's moved to deep time, which isn't the topic of the debate, right? Because evolution could be over sort of a young Earth creationist model and be incredibly rapid, and has just slowed down recently, and it would still be true. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean that evolution doesn't happen.
Yeah,
especially
exactly.
if
I borrowed a page from Forrest Velkai's Light of Evolution series. There's at one point in there where he's ranting about how much evidence there is, and he says, we could throw out the fossil record, all of it.
Yep.
We can throw out this, we can throw out that, and there's still overwhelming evidence that evolution is true. And that's the direction I took, because I knew his big problem would be fossils, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not even going to fight him on it. I'm going to bring up completely different evidence.
Absolutely. That perfect way to address somebody shifting to an unrelated topic that's sort of tangential. Don't follow down that rabbit hole. Beautiful, Ember. Like, perfect response. The whole thing is, I mean, I would probably go for genetics and things myself, chromosome 2 and ERVs, but that is really heavy subjects. So unless you've sort of done some research into it, I probably wouldn't recommend it. It's a bit of a rabbit hole. But it's almost like he expected you to bring up something that you didn't bring up. He's not. I don't know. I don't know what his point is, because he's talking about.
He may have been expecting fossils, because they do come up in a lot of the debate. So he's like, oh, it's rote. They're just gonna bring it up, and then we didn't. And it also could be because even though the deep time thing is tangential, he feels like without deep time evolution can't work. But of course, that's not true. We see evolution in real time in our own lifetimes. Even if God created the universe yesterday, we could still demonstrate evolution.
And your point sort of counters him, that just the evolution is also the change of the species. So what they call microevolution is still evolution. So it doesn't actually get you to evolution is false. You're just claiming a different model. Yeah, but yeah, I don't.
So
I mean,
sediments are laid down very rapidly by water transport, and the vast majority of the fossil record is directly tied to some sort of water transport.
yeah, so I just included this to really annoy Beamsy wherever he is, because he does geology, and water deposits sediment. Sure, okay. Do all the fossils come from water depositing sediments? Some of them, not the majority. The whole idea that because water transports sediments, therefore flood, is the angle that he's going for.
He tried for it, but he never really landed that one.
No, that was a wild haymaker that never actually connected. It was sort of yeah, I love you too, Beamsy. The whole point is that even if the flood happened, it still doesn't disprove evolution. I don't know what he's on about, like, really. And it you're right, it didn't land. You're absolutely right, Ems. It failed to connect in any way. And Jake Nelson strikes again. Jake, thank you so much. You're becoming like you're financing me. Like I said, don't go too crazy, but I do really appreciate it, mate. For $10, Ember, speak on it. Don't let them off the hook. Mark, thank you for platforming Ember. Oh, look, it's my pleasure, mate. As I said, I really enjoyed the reviews with Ember, and if you guys like it, we'll and Ember, if you're up for it, we'll certainly do more, because I think I have a good time, quite frankly. That's
Yeah, these are good shows. I feel better about the ones where I'm not one of the people under scrutiny, but yeah, it's a good time.
no, absolutely. I promise I'm not going to focus on you. Absolutely. No, I really enjoyed the other one we did, and looks like Mike is spoken. Thanks, Az. Yeah.
If you take an example like the coelacanth, I think the first coelacanth that was discovered was pinned with a date of something like 300 million years. It was assumed for a very long time that coelacanth went extinct. Okay, fast forward, I don't know, a couple decades, I think, but somebody discovered live coelacanth fish off the coast of Africa somewhere. What does that tell you? Absence from the fossil record is zero indication of extinction.
Okay, so just quickly before we start on criticism, Squid Super Hunk, $10. Thank you so much. Agreed. More Ember, please. Look, I'm listening. I absolutely am listening. Absolutely. No, I hear you. I do. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm overwhelmed. People are amazing in our community. I just I absolutely adore them. But Ember, so. This is the thing, the coelacanth thing. What are your thoughts on the coelacanth thing?
It's another haymaker. It's another rebuttal to a point nobody made that doesn't really land. This one comes closer because he harps on it more during the open discussion, but ultimately he doesn't ever actually get to a point with it, because of the whole idea that we mentioned earlier, where we simply don't have every fossil. We're not claiming to. Nobody claimed. Right. That's the problem. He put the wrong point on it by saying the fossil record can't predict extinctions. No one said that. So
right.
He's literally barking up the wrong tree, and he did it to himself.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. No, I totally agree. I think that he thinks that because some kind of organism is largely unchanged for 300 million years, then evolution must be false. And you're right. It's a wild swing, because and this is my first thought while this debate was going on. Sharks. right? Sharks,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you went over a few examples like crocodilians and things like that. I'm not sure, but sharks have been unchanged for ages. They're basically the same as they were 450 million years ago, right?
Yeah, slight size variations, but morphologically,
Absolutely.
they're the same critter, pretty much.
Yeah, essentially, there's no difference between sharks 450
And
million years ago
I
and
realize
sharks today.
why it's hard for a creationist to wrap their mind around, because their worldview is the world was created as is, so even in the past, it should be pretty much like it is now. And a shark matches that description, but they have this concept that evolution is anti that. So it's a square peg round hole problem. But
Yes.
of course, a shark fits perfectly within natural selection. We would expect to see some species who are so well honed into their niche that natural selection actually keeps them from changing. Every time there's a mutation, it's a disadvantage, so it gets deselected.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And sharks are incredibly well adapted to their niche. They are an apex predator. Well, actually, are they apex predator? I think they still get hunted by killer whales, but they are,
It's
a
messy
high
at the
level
top.
predator. Right. And, there's no real way to improve that thing. A shark is a incredibly efficient killer. It does what it does incredibly well. So there's no real evolutionary pressure to change that. I'm using this metaphorically, please, creationists, blueprint kind of thing. There's no reason to. They don't have to. They don't get pressured to. But yeah, I mean, sharks have been around 400. So sharks are definitely more successful than the coelacanth, but that doesn't mean the coelacanth has to change. Like he just doesn't understand evolution at all.
Yeah, and that's sadly, I think it's partially the fault of our educational system in the United States, because if you grow up in a place where they teach the controversy, he may not have ever been exposed to decent biology education.
Well, that's true. That's true. And Theros asked a question. I saw it basically. I will open up the stream after we do the review. I'm not sure how long I'll leave it open for, but I will open it up. Yeah, you're welcome to come on if you do have some points you want to make, mate. Theros Rex has been sort of really informative to me, so I really do want to give you a chance to talk about it. I don't know if I can blame the American education system, because this kind of stuff occurs in every country. There's young earth creationists in every country, and yes, more in the US, I grant you, but you've got to sort of say, well, I think it's just a mistrust of the science and authority. Like a lot of the flat earthers, just mistrust. They don't trust what they're being taught. So they kind of just reject it outright. You're probably right. It probably does factor in, but I think sort of for my dollar, I would probably pour more point at a mistrust of governments and authority and scientific institutions than sort of just any one education system.
Yeah, which is such a weird thing for a person of faith, but that's a whole other topic.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I gotcha.
Nothing. So when you try to make predictions about extinction from the fossil record, it's doomed to failure, because eventually what happened was another coelacanth was found, and I believe it was pinned at a date of somewhere around 60 million years. So you had a 240 million year hiatus. And
so the coelacanth, and I wanted to show this, like coelacanths aren't just coelacanths, right? Like, so you have different species of them, and this is a lack of preparation on TRock's part. And I'll just go to Wikipedia. I know that Wikipedia isn't a sort of a be all and end all, but there's only some
great for overviews and citations.
Overviews, yeah. So it's a living fossil, yes, but there's only some extant species of coelacanths. Their order is the coelocanthiforms, right? So that's their order, not their species. So what it means is that some species are extinct, some are not extinct, right? So Latimeria chaluminae and Latideria menadodonosus. I'm amazed I got through that. I probably mispronounced them, but I hope you'll forgive me. They are
all the native Latin speakers are so pissed right now.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, you can correct me. That's fine. I'm good with that. So those are the extant species, which means the species that survived. There are species that did not survive. They're dead. They're extinct, right? So he's sort of thinking coelacanths, they were around before we said they're extinct and then we found them again. Yeah, because they're a group of species. They're not all the same species. This is a misunderstanding that he has.
Yeah, it's like saying Homo erectus went extinct, and then here's Homo sapiens. So clearly the fossil record's broken or something.
Absolutely, yeah. It's kind of a real misunderstanding of what the coelacanth is. We thought they were all extinct. We found some species that were not extinct, which means that, hey, they survived. And I think TJump pointed out that, looking at the fossil record is not how we tell if something's gone extinct. Like, that's not how we evaluate that, because these living fossils that we do find, we go, oh, that didn't go extinct. That's not an extinct species, or that's not an extinct group of species, kind of thing. So, and here's the star of the show, Jen. She's the star of the show because it's Jen. It is just Jen. It's what you've been waiting for, I know. So,
I'm not really here to debate against the premise of evolution, and I'm not really sure what creation means. I'm certainly not trying to say that I'm taking a position against conservation laws, because I do like to think of myself as highly scientific, but there's problems. I mean, clearly.
Yeah, so you've already covered this, that problems with a model doesn't make the model, incorrect. It just means there's things yet to be explained in it. So, yeah, and it's just really weird that someone comes into a debate where they're against evolution and says, I don't really disagree with the, principle of evolution. It's like, why are you here?
She really didn't want to be on that side, but she felt like she had no choice. She felt like if she told James no, then she wouldn't be invited back, and she's been waiting for a while to get invited back in the first place.
Okay. All right. Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, I can understand that.
So we'll get right into it. Assumption 1, the idea that information travels along genes. Now that may seem so totally self-evident, but actually there's something that is causing the matter to have the structure that it does.
Yeah, so I don't, we know that genes cause the changes in biological, like it to sort of say that it's not the genes for some reason. I think she's trying to say the genes aren't the origin, and I'm kind of baffled by that. I don't know how the universe mind would impart information to DNA. I have no idea.
Yeah, we know now, after having talked to her more extensively, what she's alluding to is that panpsychism idea of mind creates the matter we perceive somehow. But in the moment, I was a little confused, and I was hoping
just a little.
It seemed like she was about to elucidate and actually make a point, but instead she just did that thing that mystics like to do, where she hinted at secret knowledge only she possesses, and then moved on to another point.
Yes, yeah, totally agree. Yeah, and it was never elucidated how she knew or how we could evaluate the mind giving this information. How does that transfer work? We don't know. How is, we just don't know, and she never made it clear how that was actually happening. So we're kind of all a bit baffled on this side.
And that's really where we get into where I differ. I'm not questioning the record. I'm just saying this model's not telling you what you think it does. And in a lot of ways, there's no way to verify, because I'm sure the other interlocutors can validate that DNA is not something you can really test. Genetic information is not something you can really get your hands on.
And of course, we can. It's literally how a paternity test works. That's what PCR tests do. They work with the genetic information, and CRISPR literally exists to manipulate the genetic code. We can do these things, even with our tiny little peanut brains.
Yeah, I think you just summed up exactly my thoughts. That was baffling to me that we can't, we have a genetic database. We start to log these genetic codes and manipulate them. And if we can't get our hands on genetic information, I don't know what we can get our hands on, because that is just absolutely baffling. I don't. Yeah, no, Ember summed it up brilliantly.
Genetic variation is terrible. That seems so right, doesn't it? But it's actually not how it works, because the mind is the decider. So where the actual first domino gets pushed is when you remember your parents based on shared traits and reincarnate into a fetus.
Yeah, I have no fucking idea. I mean, I followed the words coming out of her mouth.
Yes.
But they don't actually make logical sense.
Yes.
Like,
so you remember
into a fetus.
Right. So before you are an embryo, before you're born or before you're conceived or whatever, right? So you remember your parents and then you reincarnate into a fetus. I don't even know how to pass that. Like, there's so many issues with that. Like, how can you remember if you don't have a brain? Where is this mind occupying? Is it the one mind of the universe remembering the parents? Does the one mind have to remember everybody's parents? There's so many questions.
It kind of reminds me a little bit about what I've heard about Mormon birth theory, which is like the souls are hanging out in heaven, and then they like pre-choose their families and decide which couple's babies to go become or something like that.
Right. It does sound, yeah, you're right. It does sound a little like the soul decides the body it inhabits, a little bit, but more the mind decides the body that inhabits, which is, yeah. So Jake Nelson for $5, thank you so much. No animal understands evolution, they just do it. Yeah, absolutely. It's just a physical process, and we can manipulate that process.
Love to tinker.
Yeah, why does manipulating the genetics, create a different person? Does it manipulate the mind that's remembering the parents? It's a very strange position to take. I don't know.
Well, it also reminds me of the experiments. The doctor, not Kellogg, the other guy, did with the ice pick lobotomies. Like, damage to the brain resulted in personality changes. So yes. The idea that the mind causes the body to be a certain way, it doesn't check out no matter how you look at it.
Yeah. And I mean, my favorite against dualism, which are kind of, that's sort of a dualistic, but I talked to Jen and she's not a dualist. So, is that the split brain patients are my favorite, people that have their corpus callosum split. So the mind is like that, both hemispheres of the brain are completely disconnected from one another. Both side will have its own personality. It's mad. It's so wacky that it's fascinating. And even one side can be a theist and one side can be an atheist. It's absolutely, look into it.
Hell.
Oh, absolutely. Like split brain patients, fascinating stuff. I highly recommend a read.
Based on how similar you are. And that's not happening on the level of the genes. That's happening on the level of the soul. So even though you can say, well, there's tons of genetic similarities between people in the same family. Well, sure. But that's basically saying, well, I can't really say anything more about you. I can't differentiate you from your siblings. So this theory isn't really not nailing down a whole lot of precision.
So you can't differentiate you from. She doesn't understand the role of sort of, sort of the combination of parents' DNA isn't exactly the same for all siblings.
Well,
It's
from
kind
her
of
point of view, the DNA is completely irrelevant. It's all about the soul,
Right.
and you manifest the
Mm.
DNA around that.
yes. So I don't like. I think she's sort of saying that the siblings should turn out identical, but she's not understanding the actual physical processes of how that DNA is combined from the parents. So it's just not understanding how genetics works at all. And then you throw in mutation to that, and there's no reason to think both siblings should be the same. When they are the same is when you have a set of is it fraternal twins? Is it paternal twins?
Identical twins are the ones with the same genetic code, where a single
Yes.
zygote splits, and then the fraternal ones
Yes.
where multiple fertilizations happen at the same time.
Yeah. Yes. So I can't remember if it's fraternal or paternal, but
Well, we call them fraternal in the U.S., but we're probably wrong because we're in the U.S.
monozygotic twins. Okay, that's the official term. So monozygotic. So yeah, identical twins do have an identical genetic code, and you have trouble telling them apart, Jen. That's the thing.
Yeah, that's
But
a
if
big
two-
monkey wrench in her thesis there.
Right.
Unless she wants
right.
to argue that the soul somehow splits and decides to have two bodies or something like that.
Maybe.
But
Who
then we have,
knows?
even though there's similarities between the identical twins, they don't share experiences. They're not telepathic. So that would
Right.
completely destroy that too.
But don't forget, Jen is telepathic. Ems, we covered this
Oh,
the
really?
other night. Well,
I must
yeah,
have missed that part.
One of my questions to her was, if you can't trust your senses, how do you communicate through telepathy? And she's like, well, it'd take you a while to learn that. And I'm like, oh, okay.
I must have been like half asleep at that point.
Oh, that's right, Matt. You had
I
a
wish I
debate
had. Yeah, I'll have to catch her on it another time because I actually do have theories on how telepathy might be possible, and I would love to see what she would think about them.
Right. Well, it was certainly a revelation. But yeah, identical twins. So but if they are different eggs, they get the DNA from the parents is combined differently, and you get different people, like completely different. It's all very well understood. I'm not sure what she's on about, but love you, Jen. Yeah.
Is genetic variation heritable? Actually, not quite. I have darker eyes than both my parents. Well, we got to now invoke some magical thinking. What's that? Oh, it was a recessive trait. We could save the day. And then when everything isn't determined by genetics, guess how we save the day? Epigenetics. So just really invoking magical terms at every turn. That's telling me it sounds more like theological gibberish and not so much a scientific theory, which is a really simple model.
So
epigenetics is not magical.
Yeah, it's not as well understood as mainstream genetics, but it's understood. It's a thing that's documented. It exists. But that particular passage, I couldn't help but think about a thing I read on Reddit, or maybe it was one of your aimbot streams. Basically, it was a mother posted an "Am I the Asshole" kind of thread saying, I have blue eyes. My husband has green eyes. The baby has brown eyes. Thank God my husband doesn't understand basic genetics.
That I don't think that was one of my aimbots, but yeah, but eyes don't develop like that. They're not. They can be a combination of different genetics, kind of thing. I
Sure,
have to look
there's
it
a
up.
number of different alleles that go into it, but as a general rule, blue eyes are a recessive. Green eyes are a double set of recessives. Like you have to
Yes.
have both sets in order to get, otherwise you end up with just blue. Brown eyes involves a dominant. So to have dark eyes, the simple solution there is at least one of her parents is not actually her parent.
Sorry, how'd you make that determination?
Because she got a dominant trait from parents who don't have that dominant trait.
So the one person had blue eyes, another person had green eyes, and she has brown eyes? Or
That's from the Reddit story. The way Jen
okay,
put it
gotcha.
is that both of her parents have light colored eyes and she has dark colored eyes. It's sort of like one of those situations, as it seems to me. It's a forensic sort of thing. Like you walk into a room and there's a dead body, and there's a gun, but the gun has never been fired, and there's a knife, but the dye that they put on the thing shows that it hasn't been bloody. How could this person have been killed? Well, there was a person in there with hands who could have strangled them. You know, when you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, it's not even that improbable, because it does happen all the time. When you have a baby demonstrate a dominant characteristic that neither of the parents possesses, one of those parents is not actually the parent.
No, that's not how it works. Hold it. I've been looking for this. So it all comes down to, because green and brown are dominant genes, but the percentage chance of you getting them are different. So you can have somebody with the recessive blue gene, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it also has the dominant green gene, but their eyes also have the dominant brown gene, if you can see that. Right. So you could have great grandparents who carried on that gene, kind of thing, right?
Right, but that's sort of the opposite of the situation that Jen posed. Like, you've got parents with dark colored eyes, and some of the children have light colored eyes.
Yes, that's the example that I'm showing.
Right.
So the parents have dark colored eyes. They can still have a 6% chance of getting a kid with blue eyes
if they carry the recessives. But what Jen was talking about is Jen's parents have light colored eyes, and Jen has dark colored eyes. So it's the reverse. They have to have, neither of them can have that uber dominant brown trait. And yet she has it. So she did not get it from one of the people she believes are her parents.
Ugh. Okay. Yeah, that's probably true.
I mean, that's entirely a sidetrack to the actual debate. It's just, the only reason I mention it is because that's what popped into my head. I was distracted thinking of that rather than listening to her misunderstand epigenetics.
Right. Okay. So yeah, I gotcha. Well, I mean, I don't know. I thought you could still have light colored eyes people with blue eyes. So because it's let's find out what she said, because I'm
not white. I have darker eyes than both my parents.
See, she said darker eyes than both her parents, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
and that
one
isn't
parent
exact
could have
enough. Yeah.
Right, because one parent could have green eyes, but they can still carry that brown-eyed gene.
Other way.
Gotta now invoke.
Brown is dominant to green, which is dominant to blue.
Some magical thinking. Was that? Oh, it was a recessive trait. We could save the day. And then when everything isn't determined by genetics, guess how we save the day? Epigenetics. So just really invoking magical terms at every turn. That's telling me it sounds more like
Yeah, but she doesn't actually say that she's
Right.
got
She never
brown
names a
eyes.
color, which is why
Right.
I'm not 100%
Yeah.
convinced on the subject.
And so when you're talking about, like, obviously there's different colors of blue and there's different colors of green and different colors of brown. Like, we don't just have brown eyes and it's one solid color kind of thing.
Oh, sure.
So
My own eyes, for the longest time, my whole teenage years and my early 20s actually changed colors. Some days they were blue, some days they were green. That's not
Yeah.
supposed to happen, as I understand it, but I'm not the only person like that. They just
No,
finally
I don't think you
stabilized
are,
on
yeah.
green.
Yeah, so I think that it's incredibly complex what makes your eyes one shade of brown or one shade of blue kind of thing. And obviously, if your parents have, bright blue eyes, then you will probably have bright blue eyes as well. But like, I think Jen's whole thing about it being darker isn't really a good thing. Just quickly, I'm so sorry. Cool Lambo, nice Lambo. For 10 Australian dollars, 10 dollary dues. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Jesus Christ walks into a bar. 12 waters, please. Winks at disciples.
Very nice.
Okay.
As Sir Sick would say, it's proof that alcohol is divine. Though, of course, whiskey is more divine.
What was that one from The Crow? Jesus walks into a bar with a cross and nails and says to the innkeeper, "Can you put me up for the night?" Yeah. Or 3 nights, as the case may be.
Theological gibberish and not so much a scientific theory, which is a really simple model. And this is really the most problematic assumption, I think.
Oh, yeah.
The idea that mutation that is caused from random things is what is going to lead to these changes in animals and plants and living organisms.
Yeah, so we can literally change the genetic structure. You mentioned this earlier, Amber. I don't, unless you want to add something, you covered it. Absolutely. You change the genetic structure, you change the morphology of the thing. It's not rocket science.
Yeah, I mean, we've been having all kinds of fun with gene insertions using CRISPR and other retroviral caps and whatnot, plasmids, all sorts of fun stuff. We for a while, somebody was trying to make a Christmas tree with firefly genes so that the natural tree would light up. I never heard how it went, so I imagine it didn't succeed, but hey, cool project.
Science. It's about the coulda, not the shoulda. Like, can we do this? Well, let's do it then. And yeah, that's and we don't know what we can do until we try. So that's the way it goes.
Oh yeah,
but yeah, that's
I'll
such
tinker
a
with
weird
my
thing.
own genes if we ever get far enough. I would love to have crocodile hemoglobin. The fact that
I'm all in favor. Yeah,
it can double tap on CO2. We can hold our breath twice as long underwater, or breathe in a CO2 heavy atmosphere. So cool.
Look, bring on the transhumanism. I'm all for it. Like that. This is how we may, because we've kind of interrupted our own evolution with medicine and sort of preserving everybody in the species. So that would be the way forward. Direct genetic manipulation. I don't think that's. A lot of people sort of clutch pearls at it. I don't see the problem. I see it as just another technology.
Even if it's something just as simple as rendering glasses completely obsolete, how freaking cool is that?
Yeah.
Why the hell not? We're done with natural selection, artificial selection all the way. Look what it's done for our food.
Yeah. I mean, I would get green skin if I could photosynthesize.
Hell yeah.
Let's do it.
Let's
do it.
Shoot, who's the author? It's not coming to me. He wrote The Collapsing Empire, the Old Man's War series. But yeah, anyway, the soldiers in the Old Man's War series, basically they take really, really old people from Earth, and they're like, hey, you're about to die from old age. Would you like a nice young body? But you have to sign up in our galactic military for a term of 10 years. And they're like, well, I'm
That's how they
about to
get you.
die, so hell with it.
Yeah.
So they give them a nice
Mhm.
young body, but it's green because it photosynthesizes in order to maximize energy potential, because super soldiers, yay.
Yay.
John Scalzi, there
Yeah.
it is. That took a minute.
And you know, the super soldiers is a problem, cloning's a problem. We have to make some decisions on what is right and what is wrong, you know, well-being of humanity and things like that. I'm not saying there's not going to be some considerations, you know, I'm completely changing the subject, of course, but I see gene technology as another technology. It is another tool in the human arsenal, as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, I'm good with it. I'm good.
Circular logic. We have fitness, therefore fitness. Scientific model would actually mean you were giving criteria defining fitness, specific criteria, specific enough criteria that you could go out and test it.
Got about a minute left.
Oh dear, I had so much more, but I got so excited, I guess. So we'll just skip ahead. You know, I'm sure we can get into it.
So fitness means fitness. No, that it is not a tautology. They've defined fitness. It isn't just fitness is fitness. It's the ability to survive and procreate in an environment. That's it. Like, I don't know where she gets that we haven't defined fitness.
Yeah, it's a super simple concept, and then she scoffs at the idea that it's somehow testable. Like, no,
Yeah.
it really, really is. Like, you don't even have to conduct a formal test. You absolutely can, and by all means, go for it. We might learn something new, fun stuff. But, like, just go to a farm field and look at the cows producing 2.5 times more milk than they used to. You know, whatever. Go to an apple orchard. Right. Look at a Honeycrisp. Holy crap. Our biotech is incredible.
Well, and I think that you, later on in the debate, you put it really well, that it depends on the environment. So, you know, when we're talking about fitness, it seems like she wants fitness means, you know, increased body mass and, you know, a higher this or you know, a better oxygen system. And it's like, yeah, those are fit for certain environments, but that's not what fitness is. Fitness, like a bigger body mass, is detrimental in some environments. Like if you're in a cold environment, it might be detrimental to have a bigger body mass because it's harder to find the food to keep it sustainable.
Like when I was sick last week, I mean, being this big, how much energy does it take to make all of this shiver? That was freaking wasteful as hell.
Right. It doesn't necessarily mean a good thing. So it sounds like they want a set criteria of what is fit and what is not fit. And that is always changing depending on what the surrounding environment and what you are trying to survive in. So we can't give you that. If you can give us a, you know, situation, we might give you some criteria for surviving, you know, sort of. So if you're talking about a desert, you know, arid desert environment, we can say, hey, the ability to cool yourself off in some way, the ability to hide out of the sun somewhere, you know, we can give you these criteria. The ability to store water like a camel, you know, we can give you criteria, but without the environment, we can't tell you a thing about what is fit. But we can define fitness still. We can say it is environment-specific adaptation that allows the organism to survive and reproduce. That's it. That's fitness. And now that the piece de resistance, I mean, we've got to, I had to include this because Onion Man is just too good. It's too good. I'm sorry.
That's not a thing. So there is an alternate theory. You have to embrace a different type of metaphysics, which are actually parsimonious. And then, you know, so there's a bit of a learning curve. So I won't go into it now, but I did have some other stuff to share, but I think I might just skip it because James told me I had a minute, what feels like a minute ago. So we'll just hopefully.
Yeah. So what did you think of Onion Man? Yeah.
As soon as you say metaphysics and parsimony at the same time, I start thinking about contradiction, because you can't have a parsimonious system that involves metaphysics. By
Right.
definition, you're adding extra stuff that's not necessary.
Hmm. Yeah, and then it's not metaphysical anymore. It's just, yeah. I don't know, and it's just sort of, you've got to reject ordinary kind of assumptions, kind of thing. It's sort of like, well, you've got to believe it first. Is what I'm hearing. You've got to sort of buy into this alternate system first, and I don't really see a reason for doing that. I don't. Yeah, but I mean, Jen believes it. She really believes it.
Yeah, it's
Be able to explore some of these ideas in greater depth with the open conversation. Thanks again for having me. I'll wrap it up.
And
here.
she sure did.
Thank you very much.
Matter is a fork it's like a tuning fork that becomes attracted to the order of the mind. So you think of a simplistic metaphor as when you have those tiny little filings and they're put in proximity of a magnet and they take on a structure.
So I just wanted to point out that this is TRock realizing that his debate partner is not just not on the same page as him. She's not in the same book or possibly the same universe as him. Like
everybody's expressions in this scene are perfect. Like Jen is like half smiling like she's about to reveal a secret. TRock is like, I am completely boned. TJump is like, the fuck did she just say? James is like, oh my God, what is happening? And I'm like, yeah, this is about what I expected. I'm disappointed, but not surprised.
I'm sorry if your ads aren't getting to me, Theo. I'm having trouble like keeping an eye on everything. I try to see what I can, but I'm having trouble keeping an eye on everything. So I'm missing. I apologize. I'm sort of focused on the sort of show at the moment. So feel free to at me, but I may or may not see it.
If it makes you feel better, I got so far behind on chats on my stream.
Okay, yeah, no, I
only barely
get you.
caught up by the end of the stream.
I'm not good at multitasking at the best of times. I got to admit it. I'm good at sort of switching focus, but I'm not good at all things at once. So, yeah. But I just love the expression on TRock's face. I love it so much. It's just like, yeah. I don't think he's entertaining Jen's worldview. I don't think his mind is opening from that expression. Just a theory. Just a hypothesis that his mind is not. We should
see if we can get James to do a creationism versus panpsychism debate. That could be it. That could be fun.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
I think I've
How
got the
there's
shape of it.
Sorry. Oh,
there's just the filings.
You're talking in the video.
I thought you were talking. I didn't
predict this. I didn't predict this. I didn't even cross my mind that every time I hear you in the thing, I'm going to think it's you talking.
Yeah,
wow, right?
it's not me now. It's me that. But whatever.
I mean,
I'm time traveling.
It's kind of like that. The matter is being polarized or ordered by the mind.
Alrighty. How does one verify a model like that? Like, how do you know that?
Well, that kind of comes down to opening the door about a conversation about what is most important in science. Because we haven't really had that conversation yet. Like, we're sort of saying, science has to be everything. We got this crazy TJump intro video. It's like, it's like maybe trying to be all things to all people or something. But we would have to have a conversation and say, you know what? The most important thing about science, let's just say, is the ability to make predictions.
Yeah, so
can't argue with that.
Right. That is absolutely fine. I just want to give a special shout out to Caterpillar. They are amazing and awesome, and I'm so glad you're here. Everyone loves caterpillars. So Jen, she's not wrong. she's not wrong. I mean, she has trouble understanding what a prediction is, especially a testable prediction, but she's not wrong.
Yeah, that whole thing that comes up later with the whole, well, that's a claim.
Yeah.
No, you know, but
Yeah.
details.
And it's not the entirety of science, but yeah, like she's sort of like, well, fundamentally, yes, testable predictions, we're all on the same page.
And so the predictions would be things like aggregate. On the aggregate scale, the thermodynamic efficiency will always increase.
Okay, well, I'm going to stew on that for a minute.
Yeah, no, and on the aggregate, the thermodynamic exit has to increase. It didn't mean anything.
Yeah, it's this close to word salad. I think it actually is
Right.
word salad, but she by coincidence put them in an order that almost makes sense. Like my brain was actually trying to process it. Like the thermodynamic efficiency, replace that with metabolism, will tend to increase. We try to, it's not the main goal of evolution, but when it can squeeze it in, evolution will often select for a more efficient metabolic system.
But that's not necessarily the case, like when the dinosaurs went extinct, you could argue that, hey, the metabolism decreased kind of thing. Like, I'm not sure that's true.
Yeah, I don't think it is either. That was just what I was thinking in the moment as my brain was trying to parse what the hell she just said.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's something to that maybe.
Well, you got a better handle on it than I did. I'll give you that. Yeah.
Why, with the coelacanth, were you suggesting that it went extinct and then was recreated or something along those lines?
No, that's quite the opposite of what I said. What I said was fossils appear suddenly, quote unquote, suddenly. They're just there, and the coelacanth it's a good example because when you see the very first so-called first coelacanth, it's quite easily identifiable as a fish. It's just a fish. As far as I'm aware, it's a scaled fish at that. So scales.
Okay, so a fish isn't just a fish. There's nothing that is just a fish, right? Fish is a very...
By definition, there's no such thing as a fish, but I didn't want to get off in those weeds.
Yeah. That was a famous researcher who spent his entire life, 40 years or something, studying fish, just fish.
David Starr Jordan, one of the founders of Stanford University.
Right. And his conclusion was there's no such thing as a fish. Like when you're talking about piscine organisms, they are radically different, and there's no category, as far as I'm aware, that's a scaled fish. The coelacanth is a lobe-finned fish. It's not a scaled fish. You get ray-finned fish as well. Like they're different, and they're vastly different kind of things. So, A, there's no such thing as just a fish, and B, it's a lobe-finned fish, not a scaled fish. I don't. So, TRock is terrible and doesn't understand a thing about what he's talking about. And as I pointed out earlier, there's multiple species of this particular organism. Coelacanth, God, I can't even say it. How's it pronounced? Coelacanth?
Good luck.
Yeah.
That's how I pronounce that.
Coelacanth, yeah, is there's multiple species. It's an order, not a species, right? That's not a thing.
Now, in fairness to TRock, I didn't know that either. That was a thing I learned today from your research.
Okay, well, I mean, I knew that they weren't a scaled fish because I'm not sure there is a scaled fish. That's not, like, I think the lobe-finned are the ones with the scales, but they're lobe-finned. Coelacanth. Yeah, thank you so much, Daryl and Marinia. I really, really appreciate it. I should know that. Hey, like having a mental challenge.
Fully formed. It's a fish. Nobody's going to mistake it for something else. So there it is, fully formed. First time you see it, 300 million alleged years ago, and then basically you have this hiatus in the fossil record for the evolutionary estimated time of about 240 million years. That's where the 60 million year line comes from. Now, the deal, though, is that 60 million year discovery didn't come for decades after the original. What came before that 60 million year discovery was the live version.
So what?
Yeah. Honestly, I kind of zoned out at that point because it sounded like he was just babbling. I'm like, 300 million alleged years. Yeah. 60 million years. I'm like, none of this matters. The damn thing's still alive. Because I was still under the apprehension that it was a single species rather than a whole family of species. And I'm just like, this is all completely fucking irrelevant. I have to admit that was a bad move on my part. I deliberately baited him. I said, so are you trying to suggest it was created again to try to, bring him out? And he came out, and then he just kept doubling down on it. And I'm like, oh, no. This is not helping anyone's arguments.
No, it's not helping anyone's. But the whole point is that, okay, we couldn't find it because they're very rare. And then we found it, like this fish. Just say it is the same species, right? Just say we categorize it into the same species. And it's virtually unchanged. It doesn't make a damn difference because once something reaches that niche and stops changing because it has sort of gotten to a very efficient sort of body plan, if you will, or morphology for what it needs to survive, it may be unchanged. Like evolution doesn't say that things will change for no reason. There has to be evolutionary pressures to make things change, or else they won't change.
Yep, no advantage, no change. I wish I'd read his notes more closely as they were going by on the screen, because you want to talk about stasis in the fossil record, and you want to bring up trees and whales and even crabs. The fact that there's more crabs because of carcinization, really? Stasis, okay, but it's probably for the best. We would have been off on a sidetrack that may have yielded results, but probably would have just been frustrating.
Well, this is one of my favorite parts of the debate. I have to admit,
look at the leaf, living and fossil.
Look at the trees.
20 million years ago. In my world, I used to do tree trimming, and I still do some. Did some.
He does tree trimming. Here's an expert, ladies and gentlemen, on trees because he does tree trimming. You heard it
this week, actually. That's a maple leaf, and it's called liquid amber, but it's basically just a maple leaf. Is it a different species from what I'm used to? Probably, but irrelevant because it's easily recognizable as a maple leaf.
Okay. So maple leaves and liquid amber. Basically, is it a maple leaf? Yeah, because it looks like a maple leaf. Like what kind?
It looks like it.
It looks like it.
Looks designed.
That's what it is. Like if you look at, and I did last night sort of pin these down, which I did not say, but they're completely different orders of plants. I can quickly find them again if you give me 1 second. But the maple, so again to Wikipedia, because I'm lazy. So the maple leaf, the order is Sapindales, right? So, and the family is Sapindaceae. The living liquid amber.
Yeah, I think that's what we called it.
Amber is sweet gums, right? Liquid amber. The order is Saxifragilas. So, like,
oh, nice.
It doesn't. They're both Eudicotes, but
the leaf shape looks vaguely similar on the surface, but their other traits are vastly different. Like the fact that this is from Saxifragilis, that tells me that the roots will tear the shit out of rock, which is not true for a regular maple. It'll grow around rocks.
Right. That morphologically they are completely different. So the whole point that I'm making is that he sees a leaf that looks like something. That doesn't mean it is that something. And the whole idea, well, it doesn't matter. Of course it matters. Like, you're talking about complete variations kind of thing. That if you just look at the leaf and say, hey, that fossil looks like a maple leaf. Like, if you want to talk about science, that is not how we do science. We don't just look at a fossil and go, well, that looks like a maple leaf. We'll categorize it as a maple.
Yeah,
Like,
and
what
all of this is just nitpicking because he's invoking trees. Cool. The fossil record shows when trees appeared. So even if one species of tree stays the same for a long period of time, in order for you to present that evidence, you're implicitly accepting the other evidence that shows evolution did happen.
Oh, totally. This was baffling as to why he thought this was a point. Like TRock, and you described it perfectly, just doing wild swings that are landing nowhere near his target. Like, they just don't land.
Yeah, all kinds of things. Earthworms have been largely unchanged for millions of years as well. There are certain optimal configurations, as we've seen with modern living creatures experiencing convergent evolution. Like the shape of a wing, the function of a wing is virtually the same from critter to critter to critter. You've got different variations on the design, like a dragonfly has 4 wings instead of just 2, but the aerodynamics are the aerodynamics, so wings develop into wings. Also, it's worth noting that we don't yet have every fossil.
So 2 beautiful points, one after another. Number 1, evolutionary niches. Beautiful, like absolutely beautiful. It shows how irrelevant what he is bringing up. Like, we're not saying that everything should change on a linear time scale. Pointless. Beautiful. And that we only have a tiny percentage of the fossils. Like, why would we expect to have every fossil?
Yeah, especially from a creationist, it's infuriating because their whole thing is the absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. Their entire thing is based on that.
Yeah.
And we don't have every fossil. Yeah. It's fine.
Yep. No, absolutely rebutted. And, you know, I think he's starting to get a bit irritated at this point because he sort of, you know, his tone shifts.
Well, that's what I was saying. You can't predict extinction by the fossil record. You can't predict arrival either.
Nobody does that. It's not a thing. It's not like we can predict. No one's trying to predict extinctions by the fossil record. That's not a thing. So I don't know why you think that's significant. Like, obviously.
Yeah, so when you predict something, you're saying this will happen in the future. We don't look at fossils and saying, hey, we'll predict that this species, the panda, will go extinct because of the fossil record. Like, nobody is doing that.
It's like reading tea leaves or something. I see here that your species will die out in the next 10 million years.
I see the skull. It means death for your species.
Boundary where dinosaurs went extinct specifically because of that event. But it's the
dinosaurs
same basic
didn't go
problems with the
extinct.
coelacanth.
Dinosaurs didn't go extinct. Nobody's predicting all dinosaurs went extinct. Birds are dinosaurs. Crocodiles are dinosaurs. Sharks are dinosaurs.
Okay, so one nitpick. Sharks are not dinosaurs.
He's not right about it. Yeah, neither are crocodiles. But I'm like, you know what? It's not important, and I'm certainly not going to attack somebody on my own side.
Yes, but we call birds avian dinosaurs as opposed to the non-avian dinosaurs. They literally are the descendants of the dinosaurs still carrying on today. So TJump has a really good point here. Yeah, no, TJump's biology is not his strong suit. I get that. You know, he got called last minute. I'm prepared to give a lot of leeway to TJump on this one because I don't even know how I'd do jumping in last minute. You know, I would probably struggle a bit as well. And I mean, I've gotten stuff in biology wrong before. Like, it's fine. You're gonna get stuff wrong. It's perfectly fine. TJump has a good point though. You know, like, excellent point. Like you say, dinosaurs went extinct. No, we just make them into chicken nuggets. That's all.
Tasty dinos.
Tasty dino.
There's lots of things that are dinosaurs that still exist. No one's trying to predict things going extinct by the fossil record. It's just not a thing that science does.
I wish you kind of expounded on that and said, hey, like we can look at the fossil record and what exists today and sort of deduce what went extinct or what we think went extinct, but no one's making predictions on that. Because I think that got a little lost, but that's okay. That's a real nitpick right there. Anything to add, Ember?
I just, the way you phrased it made me think that it could be that TRock was understanding backwards, that possibly the information he'd been exposed to had led him to think that we weren't actually predicting extinctions, that we were seeing the ends of lines and whatnot, like the dinosaur KT boundary event, and we're saying, aha, this is when the extinction happened. So it may be a miscommunication because his understanding is inverted.
Yes, maybe. Maybe he predict is entirely the wrong word he was trying to use there. But I get TJump's point.
So the ability to predict things we don't know yet, like a double hinge jaw joint transition between lizards and mammals, and getting it right before we knew it, that's evidence. That's real evidence. You guys don't have any evidence. You have an imaginary story that makes you feel good. But what we need is some way to differentiate which of these hypotheses is better. And the way to do that is the one that can make the correct predictions the most. Evolution makes tens of thousands of these. Now, Jen wants to bring up about your assumptions. Assumptions are irrelevant. You can make.
Well, I was trying to tell you that predictions are about the future, Tom. So if evolution was actually a model, it would tell us what we were going to evolve into.
No. And we covered this in the after show.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, so she thinks that prediction means that we have to predict how evolution is going to turn an organism into, but that's not what we're saying for a prediction. The prediction is we will discover this thing, and before we even know it's there, and then we discover it. That's the prediction.
Yeah, it's very much like in astrophysics. Well, not even astrophysics, just astronomy. Like, we observed that there was a wiggle in the orbits of Jupiter and Saturn. And so we predicted there was another planet out there. And then we looked and there was, Titan Uranus with his wrench and whatnot. And then we saw another wiggle. And so we did some math and we said, oh, there's yet another planet. And we did more math and we figured out exactly where the planet should be mathematically and pointed our telescopes at that spot. And holy shit, there was a planet right there. The planet had been there for billions of years, so it was a past thing. But it's still a prediction because we didn't know that yet.
Yes. Yeah. And so we kind of cleared that up in the after show with Jen. So hopefully she's got a better idea of what we mean by predictions now, that knowledge we don't have access to, that we predict, and then we find out that that prediction is actually true. That's what we're talking about, not predicting where humans are going to evolve into. That's not what anyone.
Yeah, it's random elements. You can't predict random elements.
Right. And we can't predict our environment. If we knew the environment that humans would have to survive in and the evolutionary pressures would be subjected to, we could maybe make some predictions about that. But we don't know. Like, we just don't know what humans are going to have to do in future. Like, we don't know the future, unfortunately. I mean, I'd love to, but technically I am in the future, but just
that's true. But if Jen's panpsychism were correct, it should be able to make predictions about the future in that fortune teller kind of way. Because it's all determined by mind, and the great mind has already determined all the things. And you communicate with it by telepathy,
I don't know how much communication Jen thinks we have with this great mind. I find it.
I don't know. It's probably not important anyway.
Evolution does not need to predict what we're going to evolve into. Evolution says that we're going to evolve into what is.
If it were a theory, Tom, it would be predicting the future.
Let's give Tom another 30 seconds, and we'll come over to you, Jen.
So no, you do not need to predict what we're going to evolve into. Evolution is saying we will evolve into things that are more conducive to the environment, whatever the environment is. Do we know what the environment is going to be? No, because environments change based off of geology and other things. So no, you don't need to predict what we're going to be. Predictions apply to any unknown facts about the universe. Can you predict that those will be known? prior to us actually discovering them. Applies to anything in the past too. You don't need to predict what we're going to evolve into. Literally
So
irrelevant.
geology is not a science either, I guess.
All of that, and that's her takeaway.
Yeah.
I want to flip a frickin' table, you know?
Yeah, I know. But it's sort of like, so geology will make predictions like, hey, according to our model, if we search here, we will find oil, right? And they use these models all the time, Jen.
That's how we find the oil.
Right, and that's geology. So yes, they're making a text testable prediction. They're not going to say, hey, in 2 billion years there will be oil here or something. That's not what we're doing. We're saying, hey, we don't know where the oil is. This model predicts where we will find the oil. If we actually do find the oil, that is a good prediction that shows that the model is correct. It's I really hope our conversation with her.
But the oil's been there for 1 million years or more. So clearly, it's not a prediction.
True. How can I possibly argue with that? Much love to Jen. I really hope our conversation sort of cleared that up. I think it's just a misunderstanding on her part, kind of thing.
It is.
But seriously, I just want to know where you get the assumption that the way a species looks has anything to do with its genetics.
I mean, that kind of runs sort of counter to what TRock was saying earlier. It looks like a maple tree. So I don't know. I just don't know.
I mean, you can take all of the genetic information, the nested hierarchy of things, and their genetic information falls perfectly into that. And if we change the genetics, we change the morphology, as you were talking about earlier. If they change the genetics, they can grow an ear on the back of a mouse or something. This isn't something that we haven't done.
We've done on purpose.
Right. We
crazy.
can. Yeah, I mean, that experiment, they changed the genes of a mouse. The mouse grew an ear on its back. I mean, I don't know what better evidence.
For those of you who haven't seen it, it's a human ear, and you definitely should Google it. You will never forget that image for the rest of your life.
I haven't. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
That's not an assumption. That's literally like.
It is an assumption, I'm afraid, of evolutionary theory.
No, we can literally change the genetics and then watch the species form, and it has a different.
This is your same argument as we can cut out someone's brain, and therefore consciousness comes from the brain.
What?
She's.
So I know that TJump and Jen have had a long history before. Like, she's interacted with him on many, many occasions. They disagree on a lot of stuff. I think this is from a previous argument. I just sort of outlined this because I wasn't sure if you'd know about it or not, Ember.
Yeah, that's the gist I got too. In fact, I almost wanted to call them out on referencing previous and completely unrelated debates, but I didn't want to waste the time to do it. It was just better to try to get them back on track and move along.
Yeah, no, fair call. Absolutely fair call.
It's absolutely correct. And you're not predicting anything. What you're doing is using inductive or deductive reasoning to basically follow a pattern. That's what you're doing. Okay. But here's the deal. When you start citing prediction as the thing that validates your model, evolution falls really, really flat on this. And the reason I say that is because when you're going to make a quote unquote prediction in the colloquial sense, if you're going to make a prediction based on your model, and say that it distinguishes your model above another one, you have to use the principles that are exclusive to your model. You cannot use the overlap area.
So this is weird, and it annoys me how much he waffles to get to one point. So basically, he's trying to say that your prediction, the what you predict, must only be able to be explained by your particular model, basically. So it can't be explained by any other model.
Yeah, he has a very hard time getting it out, and he phrases it badly, which is what TJump jumps on. But I get what he's trying to say. To go to astrophysics again, because I'm most comfortable in that field. When Fred Hoyle and George Gamow were fighting over whether the Big Bang was true or steady state theory was true, neither one could use the nucleosynthesis of heavy elements as a proof for their theory because they shared the data. It was the same prediction. It was a prediction that couldn't distinguish between the theories. So that's what TRock's getting at, is you can't make a prediction that isn't exclusive to your theory, is I think what he meant to say, because it doesn't prove your theory.
But the problem with that is that the evolutionary model is making these predictions while the creationist model is not. That's the difference. Like if creationists were coming up with these predictions and they were coming true as well, then we could say, hey, that's, your model has merit as well. It'd be a much more confusing situation. But I think TJump, and he's got a good point, that we're making the predictions, not you. You're just coming along afterwards and accommodating those predictions into your model.
And sometimes not even then.
Yeah. That's true.
It looks like a maple tree.
You have to get out of the overlap zone, and you have to use the principles that are exclusive to your model.
Yeah, that's wrong. That just shows you don't understand science or philosophy.
No, that shows you don't understand the difference between...
Stop. One second.
No, you stopped for a second. You talked for quite a while ago.
I need to give the argument there. So you don't understand basic philosophy here. It's called the problem of underdetermination. There is no ever being able to get over to like exclusive facts that are only in your model. There's always infinitely many empirically equivalent theories that can explain all the data, no matter what. We could all have been created by leprechauns farting out the universe 5 seconds ago, and that could create all of the evidence we see in front of us. So the fact that you want to have some exclusionary fact that only works for one hypothesis is just an ignorance of basic philosophy. You can't do that.
Yeah, so accommodating facts, which TJump's going on about.
Yeah, he's philosophy is his primary specialty. So yeah, TRock picked a fight with a grizzly bear on that one.
Yeah. I mean, I disagree with TJump on certain things, like, absolutely. But he's got a point that you can't just accommodate facts into your model. And I think he's sort of, he's sort of missed the predictions part. He's just sort of saying, hey, if you've got a model that's, hey, magic or farting leprechauns, as he put it, or magic unicorns, just because that can account for everything we see, account for all the data that we see, doesn't mean that it's making testable predictions. That's essentially what he's saying.
Yeah, it's the same thing with the Big Bang versus steady state, in that the recession of distant galaxies. Like, the whole point of steady state is the galaxies are also receding, except the universe isn't actually changing size because it's infinite. And then they came up with an ad hoc thing of, hydrogen atoms being produced in intergalactic space, but never actually got around to making a unique prediction for that theory. It was always just accommodate the data that the Big Bang side was producing. Always accommodate, never predicting. And
whoops. And that's why it lost. Yeah.
So leprechauns could have farted out the universe 5 seconds ago and made everything how it looks today. Why would that not explain all the data?
Because that is pure fantasy.
It's the best answer. I can't explain it because it's disastrous for my cause.
So it's just, I put this in because it's hilarious to me every time I see a creationist who is just immune to irony. Like, irony just doesn't, like, they don't, just saying, so they come up with this rationale that God did it all. And that's solid and reliable, and that is the thing that I'm going to. But when you come up with farting leprechauns, which there's no more evidence for God than there is farting leprechauns, maybe a little, it's written in a Bible, but that's not very strong. So, and they just say, well, that's not reasonable because it's just fantasy. It's like, wow, you don't understand irony, do you? The irony was thick that night. I gotta say, it was palatable.
Oh, for sure. I 100% wish I'd expressly pointed out that irony. I felt like it was better to just let people see it. But in hindsight, I wish I'd called it out.
I
mean,
wish you'd
there's-
called it out and just said,
There's a
Really?
reason that, like, you know, a bunch of us atheists have our own version of something that's obviously a spoof
Yeah.
on a creator god. You know, Skeptic has Lisa the Rainbow Giraffe.
flying spaghetti monster. You know,
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff, and mine is Nil,
Yeah.
which is a big purple butterfly that I designed and I freaking love it. But one of the reasons it's a butterfly, Pragmatic Crystal knows a couple of the other reasons, but one of the reasons is so it can fly over the creationist heads when they don't understand the irony
Right,
of
right, yeah.
rejecting one fantasy
Nice.
while believing in another.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go for magic unicorn or flying spaghetti monster or anything really. You know, it doesn't really matter what it is. The whole point is if you just have something that can accommodate the facts, there's billions of possibilities of something that accommodates the facts. We want to know if it's true, not that it can accommodate the facts.
How can we
want to know
determine which of these possibilities is true, if any of them? Maybe we can
if
rule
any.
them
Yeah,
all out.
absolutely. Maybe it's something that we have no idea what it is yet. We don't know. So there's no reason to say, well, that's a good enough explanation. If the evidence does not warrant it, we can say, hey, we don't know. That's perfectly reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
But
I
anyway,
don't know
yeah,
is honest. I need to take
Yeah.
a little break. It's we're at
Oh,
2 hours
sure.
and 15 here, and I came right from my other stream, so I'll be back in like 5 minutes. Don't wait. I'll
Okay.
be back quickly. All right.
Okay, no problem.
You don't need to invoke leprechauns. It's about necessary conditions, not whatever crap I can
This
think of.
is a specific question. Why would, if suppose there are magical leprechauns, they farted out the universe 5 seconds ago to exactly the way it looks to us today, including our brain states with all of our memories and all of the empirical data we see, why would that not explain all of the data? Everything we see, literally everything.
Because it has a positive formation energy.
Yep, you heard it first, because it has a positive formation energy. So nobody understood that. Nobody understood what she was talking about. I don't understand what she's talking about. The positive formation energy. Like, why can't a leprechaun have a positive formation energy? You know, that it wants to create something, as far as I can understand it, and have the energy to do so. I have no idea. You know, I really love the look on TJump's face here, because that doesn't tell me anything about why it's not possible.
That doesn't make sense, Jen.
Actually,
No, that
you
doesn't make
literally
sense.
can,
What?
and it has happened.
Can what?
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, if you have a model with exclusive information, we would be excited to hear about it.
Okay.
I want to. Let's go to that in a second. But let's say whatever your predictions are, I can say leprechauns farted out the universe with that fact, and it wouldn't be exclusionary. To
And then
you.
I can say, show me your peer-reviewed papers, since that's your standard.
What does that have to do with your original claim that you need predictions exclusionary to your model? I just proved that claim false. You don't need that.
No, you didn't. You dreamt
Did.
up a fantasy story and said it proved the claim false.
The irony is just too thick on this. So basically, TJump, exclusionary predictions are what you need. Like, they're kind of talking past one another a little bit, because he's sort of saying you don't need exclusion predictions in order to show your thing. You kind of do. So it provides weight if your model predicts something that nobody else does. But I don't think that's what they're talking about. They're talking about a model which has an exclusive explanation for the facts, right? So something that explains the facts when the other model can't. And TJump is right to point out that you can always find an explanation that accommodates all the facts. This is basically what we've been going on about. Like, you know, Rob the magic unicorn with all the properties necessary to create the universe explains the universe. Like, there's nothing that Bob the magic unicorn that doesn't explain it, if that's, you know, what you've made it to be. But if I can predict using my model of Bob the Magic Unicorn something that no other model can predict, if I can predict that the James Webb is going to find, you know, an energy thing and start predicting all of the planets that it finds, what their weight is, what their size is, then that model will gain weight as far as reliability is concerned. And that's what we're talking about. If our current model can't predict it and Bob can, then that has weight. But TRock's sort of going, well, I've got a model that can explain things that yours can't, and TJump sort of, well, the magic unicorn or the farting unicorn or whatever, the farting leprechaun or whatever it is, explains it as well. And he goes, no, you need peer review papers. He's completely missed the mark, because you could say, okay, well, your explanation of God done it, you could say that's pure fantasy as well. And how do you show that accommodates it? Well, show us the peer reviewed papers on God. There is none. Like, you've just made up a fantasy as well. You're doing exactly the same thing, and he doesn't realize that all of his objections to what TJump is doing with the farting leprechaun can be applied to his worldview as well. He just doesn't get it. It's baffling to me. As I said, TRock is absolutely immune to irony. He just doesn't get irony, because this was very, very cringe.
Anybody, what you're doing is exactly what I did with the farting leprechaun hypothesis. You take a fact that we discover that somebody else predicted, and you say, well, I can explain that into my worldview. This is called post hoc rationalization. So you can take any fact you want and fit it into your already preconceived worldview. And anybody can do this, because we have these things called imagination. Now, we don't really care about that, and science doesn't care about that. It's fine that you can post hoc rationalize anything facts you want into your worldview. It's not evidence of anything. There is no overlap zone. Everything is an overlap zone, and so it's not a relevant argument. What we need is, can you predict it before we know it? And guess who did that? Evolutionists.
So if everything.
Yeah, and that's the point. Like, it's the evolutionists doing these predictions. We'll find a bird with unfused wing fingers. We'll find a fish that can breathe on land and have sort of walking fins kind of thing. We'll find this fossil. These are the predictions being made, and they constantly get over and over. Just because someone can come in and say, well, my worldview accommodates that because God put it there, or because the magical unicorn did this, or just because you can accommodate that, that is not a prediction. That is not what you are doing. And I think it's really good that TJump points out it is evolution doing this, not creationists. If you started doing these predictions and started being right about stuff, then we would sit up and take notice of you, scientifically speaking, of course, because nobody really pays attention to young Earth creationism. So, I really think that TJump made a good point here, that if you were doing what evolution has been doing, then you would have a stronger stance to take, but they aren't. Just because you accommodate a fact doesn't mean you predicted that fact. Evolution's doing that.
Robert Humphreys was wrong. We know he's wrong because we can use his calculations to calculate the magnetic field of all different bodies. And he only got one right. The rest of them are all wrong, which is called luck.
Sorry, correct, right. Exactly incorrect, misinformation.
No, that's exactly correct. Like, if we
he applied the same model to several planetary bodies, and they were all way closer than the evolutionary predictions that they should be.
Evolution doesn't predict geophysics and astronomical bodies.
Wrong again. Sorry, that's just completely inconsistent with the literature.
Evolution has to do with biology. It has nothing to say about the magnetic field strength of freaking Jupiter.
Yeah, I love this from Ember. Like it's just, what are you talking about? Like, evolution predicts the magnetic strength of planets. Like, I don't know what TRock thinks evolution is. He might be working from a Hovind model of evolution has to be, formation of the universe, evolution of planets, like all of these different evolution thing. But like, what are you're in a debate about evolution. It's obviously biological evolution. This is one of the reasons when I do evolution against people like TRock or Hovind or any of these young earth creationists, I insist on it being biological evolution, because they will just go way off topic to anything else, like it's so baffling how he got to. It's an evolutionary prediction about the magnetic strength of planets. It is absolutely baffling. And I just say, Ember, I loved you just schooled, absolutely took down TRock on that one. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, my best guess is that he was trying to play off that angle of deep time is wrong, therefore evolution can't be true thing, but he didn't really connect the dots on that one.
No, I think it was actually because Kent Hovind, and I said he kind of rocks in that area of Kent Hovind, and he has this thing of evolution has 6 parts. It's universe evolution, then stellar evolution, then planetary evolution, then sort of the origin of life kind of thing. So expects you to explain all of it as part of evolution.
Yeah, AIG does the same thing. The whole, oh, there's no God? Well, explain all the questions in the universe then. And if you can't, then I win by default.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But that was great. That was just, what are you talking about? Like, seriously.
I don't know if we want to go into the abiogenesis thing, or if people want to like maybe concede that I have a point that it might be problematic that there's no model for abiogenesis.
There is a model. What are you talking about? Like, even
there's many models.
Mm-hmm.
There's quite a few, actually. We don't know which one's right, but there's many models.
Yeah, I still like the panspermia. I'm not saying that panspermia is true. I just enjoy the model. It's a fun model. Yeah. But so, like Forrest Velkai said, the fact that we find fully formed nucleotides on asteroids just reinforces the possibility that abiogenesis is very likely on a planet like Earth that was friendly towards the formation of life. If it can form on freaking asteroids, it can certainly form here.
Have you read the paper on that? It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
The one about the asteroid?
Yeah, the Japanese research team, space exploration team, found that on that asteroid it was a uracil, one of the nucleotides.
That was the basis for that off-schedule live stream that I pulled.
Yes, and that's where I first learned about it.
Yeah,
it was absolutely fascinating. But they described how, because we've had this thing of how does the heating and cooling occur, of having to activate these certain things, we would need heating and cooling. And they hypothesized, we don't know for sure, I'm not saying this is what happened, but they hypothesized that maybe the rotation of the asteroid exposed it to sun and then not sun, and then sun and then not sun. So the heating and cooling's been right. It's a reasonable hypothesis, which we're not saying is true. It's just, it's one of the things they postulated as possible. So it may be the case. And so what I would lean towards is sort of, panspermia with RNA world kind of thing, like a hybrid kind of explanation, that some of the nucleotides developed here then, sort of arrived at Earth on an asteroid, but just
it very well could be a comet impregnated the Earth, to do a callback from the earlier live stream. I think Christ Brings the Sword left, but he was on a whole kick about how comets impregnate things, and that's how prophecies for something I don't know.
But just because we don't know how it occurred doesn't mean you get to insert a god there. That's literally the argument from ignorance. You just because we don't know doesn't mean your explanation is any better.
Yeah, and as TJump went to great lengths to illustrate with his farting leprechauns, anywhere you can stick a god, you can stick literally anything else.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely agree.
If there wasn't a model, that wouldn't be problematic. It'd just be an argument from ignorance fallacy, but there is a model.
From where we sit right now, we really need an entirely different model to come in and do head-to-head combat with evolution and do a better job of describing reality. And so far, I'm not seeing one. I'm just seeing a couple nitpicks about the magnetic field strength of Uranus and the lack of proof for abiogenesis.
Well said. The magnetic strength of Uranus. I just loved that. I thought it just poked him so hard. Yeah, no, fantastic. And yeah, you're right. Like when we've got a better model that can make better predictions, we'll use it.
Yeah, and that's a thing I learned the hard way, working in astrophysics versus cosmology, because cosmology does come off as a bit of a religion sometimes. The way there's things that are taken as gospel truth that are completely unfalsifiable, like some subscribers invest mentally into multiverse theory, which completely unfalsifiable. It's maybe it would explain a few things, but we have no way to test for it, you know? And so when you come across that kind of thing, you get confronted with people who are invested, people who their career is invested. And you can't just nitpick those ideas apart, even if you point out they're unfalsifiable. You have to replace them with something better. The same way Einstein replaced Newton's theories with something more accurate.
Yes. Oh, well said. Yeah, absolutely. And as far as multiverse, I'm very tentative. You know, I'm sort of saying, hey, it may be the case that there's a multiverse, but we don't know. The math seems to work in sort of the 11 dimensions kind of thing, but that doesn't show that it's actually true. Yeah, I mean, it's all, it is hypothesis at this point. You cannot say that is, you know, that multiverse is true. We don't know. Nobody has shown that to be the case.
Yeah, I'm personally not a fan for the same reason I'm an atheist, because I'm a skeptic. I see no reason to think so, and it doesn't add anything to the conversation. We can presuppose 11 dimensions, but it doesn't do anything for us.
But at the same time, I also won't say, well, it's impossible that there's a multiverse. I won't discount it either, because I don't know that for sure.
Yeah, I'm agnostic on the matter. In fact, if I want to get right down to it, I am agnostic, and I don't see a value in it for explanatory reasons. However, using the same general principle as the Drake equation, if one universe can form, then it seems likely that more than one could.
Yes, yeah, that's true, but we just don't know enough about the formation of universes because we only have one sample and we don't even understand the formation of this one. So, you know, to say how probable it is that the universe either A, formed in this way, you know, or formed in another way, or multiple would form, we just do not have enough data to make any meaningful statistical analysis of that. You could make a Bayesian analysis, but you would have to be making vast assumptions in order to sort of, you know, populate the input of that Bayesian analysis. I find it completely untenable to make any coherent statement about the formation of universes with the data that we have right now. Not to say that we won't have that data. We may do in future. It you know, may be
if we ever find a way to access another universe, that'll open up huge amounts of sets of data. For one thing, confirming there are other universes. I'm just like, I understand we're dealing with variables that are so variable. They literally range from 0 to infinity. Like there's no value to those variables that we can concretely, we can't even put error bars on it. It's a big total unknown. The only thing that sways it towards the side of slightly more probable, in my opinion, is the fact that we know one universe exists. So therefore it is possible for universes to exist.
Yes.
That's not much.
But we don't know any of the mechanisms. Yeah. No, I get you.
But I do an application version of what I do, and mathematical models is a big part of engineering. So whenever I look at evolutionary mathematical models, they're a joke because you can't use that type of logic in the real world to actually build buildings and bridges and cars and stuff like that.
No, we're not
Totally
building
irrelevant.
bridges with evolution. It would be really cool if we could grow a bridge or something. That would be
No,
amazing.
you're missing.
I had to sort of go, yeah, no, like evolution isn't, you know, how do you know we won't grow bridges in the future? I thought it was a great point, Amber. Like, you know,
I
we
would
do
love to
use
see
it-
more biological structures. That would be cool. Like
Yeah,
a
that
greenhouse
would
that
be
is
cool.
or a treehouse. A treehouse that's literally a tree.
A treehouse.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, sort of that's not what it's for. It's for making vaccines and, you know, analyzing how things will develop and improving our crops and you know, genetics and evolution isn't for building. I don't like TRock's points are so like, you know, he's swinging at air. He really has nothing. It's yeah. I'm blown away every time I watch this. It's just like, what are you trying to say? Because it's so irrelevant to the subject.
My point. You want to talk evolution as in biology? That's fine. We can do that because that's the whole deal is evolution on trial, and I know that means
That's the topic.
That's fine. But it also relies heavily on mathematical models and
No, it doesn't. Like Darwin
sorry.
did zero math. Darwin did zero math.
does.
And he was right. He was right in all of his book. He did no math. There was no mathematical equations in the origin of species. Didn't happen.
Okay.
You don't need math
can
either.
So far what I've heard is you don't have to test your hypotheses. You
Well,
don't
no,
have to have a
you do have to
mathematical
test them.
model. You can just
don't-
look
you
at
don't
the
need a
evidence, make a
mathematical
deduction, and say you're right.
That is such a straw man. Like you were not paying attention through any of it.
Well, he's too busy being right to hear what's being said.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
That's how
Like
we do things.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. I forgot totally that he's factually correct. You know, I forgot.
One
Relevant.
possible prediction could be that fitness is going to increase over time. And then I'm going to put it to you and say, like, well, how do we define that? It doesn't have to be a perfect definition, just even a partial definition that we can actually test. It's got to be specific enough to test
Wait, are you
to
saying
the
that's a
exclusion of
prediction
other
evolution?
interpretations.
Well,
you're
how
saying, like-
about antibiotic-resistant bacteria? We predicted that if we continue to misuse antibiotics, that bacteria would develop resistance to it. And lo and behold, here we are in a world full of antibiotic-resistant bacteria. They gained fitness and became more
Sure.
immune to our
That's a-
That
that's a
doesn't
great-
lend. Go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry, it's a great point you bring up, Ember, but here's the huge glaring problem with it. So you predict antibiotic resistance in bacteria, but in my line of work, we do a lot of root cause analysis, and in root cause analysis, you're literally advised to ask like 11 questions deep to sort out why are the bacteria resistant to any antibiotics. And as it turns out, what's really happening is in some cases anyway, the bacteria has the ability to absorb the antibiotic drug that you give them, and there's always a small percentage that absorption method that the bacteria uses is basically dysfunctional and can't absorb the antibiotic into its interior inside the cell wall. So do they become antibiotic resistant? Sure, but all you did was killed off the ones that could absorb it and left behind only the ones that were already broken and couldn't.
Congratulations, that's fitness. You just proved evolution.
Yeah, that
I love how but he takes so long. He waffles so much. He's like, you know, waffling, and it's just he just described evolution.
Yeah,
that's evolution.
And that's one of the reasons it's so important to put the definitions in the beginning. The change in the frequency of the heritable characteristics over time.
Mm-hmm.
Good job, TRock. You made our case for us. But yeah, the waffles and the word salad. Yeah. I'm getting. This is why I'm overweight, because I keep getting overfed on this kind of.
Yeah. Too much of that dressing, you know. You gotta find the light version of your balsamic dressing or something. less fat, and yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, to put a finer point on it, what's actually happening is there is a serious loss of fitness in the resistant bacteria because this has been done before. If you turn them back into the wild, so to speak, they can't survive. They needed what the original population had that you killed in the wild. They only survive when you coddle them in a petri dish and give them the antibiotic that killed all the healthy ones.
No,
So no increase in fitness, a serious decrease in fitness, and nothing that suggests
it's an increase in fitness for that specific
the populations are going to
circumstance.
continue to evolve into the next great thing.
Well, literally, you're just denying reality because we've done this experiment. Like Ember mentioned the experiment where I forget what it was. The bacteria had developed the ability to process citrate. That
Lenski experiments is what you're after. Lenski labs. Yeah, and that's
new ability is a developed thing where the entire other population died because they didn't have any food, and they didn't require them. They no longer needed this other population that had these other magical deteriorating things that they lost. All bullshit. Didn't happen. Worked just fine.
Factually wrong again.
So I wish TJump hadn't cut you off because you were making a really good point. No, it's fitness for that circumstance is what you said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that environment, that set of circumstances, you are fitter for that one. And I don't know why this never sinks in that fitness is a measurement specific to an environment. It isn't this linear, static thing that things are always fit. And things, and I've explained this to creationists over and over, and it doesn't seem to sink in. Like that, people who have denser bones, they might do better in sort of hazardous environments where you might break bones. They also can't float as well, so they're worse swimmers. Right. So if you have there's actually, they documented a gene that gave people these dense bones. They actually found it after a car accident. And none of the family had broken bones. And they went, what the? And found this gene that explained why they had denser bones, but they actually had trouble swimming. In an aquatic environment, dense bones are a definite negative.
Mm-hmm.
However, they are incredibly beneficial under some circumstances. So I wish TJump hadn't cut you off because this was such an important point. That because the environment had citric acid in it, they were fitter for that environment, but not the other one. Well, actually, I don't think they even lost the ability to metabolize their original food. So their overall fitness went up as well, but I don't think they could metabolize it as well as, the generations that died out.
Well, I'm not sure about the bacteria with the citrates, but in the case of antibiotic-resistant bacteria, obviously they didn't lose all that much fitness for the wild because antibiotic-resistant bacteria keep infecting people. They're not just in petri dishes. They're out there and surviving.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's incredible when you hear a creationist explain evolution exactly and then say, well, that's not evolution, it's devolution, or, de-evolution.
They love the deleterious changes. And I can't remember if I got to bring it up in the debate, but one of my favorite examples is lactose tolerance. I think you did. Yes, you did. Because of a mutation that broke a gene that enables us to continue to process lactose long after we're supposed to stop.
Yeah.
You haven't established any genetic drift. You've just established a drift in the distribution of the population. So I'm trying to entice you to go a little further and question the assumption that what is motivating the change is.
So I had to put this in because she brings up genetic drift, and TRock is like, that is true. No, it's not. Genetic drift is something completely and utterly different. We're talking mechanisms here. So natural selection or artificial selection is that weeding out of. Genetic drift is completely random stuff that affects the genetic population, like, a volcano erupts and kills a whole bunch of species, right? There's nothing they can do to survive. That's genetic drift. It's the sort of arbitrary things that happen. It's that, some birds are on an island, their island sinks, they all die. It's not a measure of fitness that they got selected against. That is genetic drift. So she has no idea what genetic drift is because she's trying to use it as, this, well, you're not describing genetic drift. No, they're not. They're describing selection. They're two different things.
Yeah, drift is not part of the equation or anyone's definition.
Right.
At this point, I don't know. It feels like she's just throwing out terms she's heard and hoping they derail the train that's about to run her over.
Well, she might be talking of something else and used the wrong description, or like maybe she's saying, well, you're not talking about natural selection. And there's the question, is using antibacterials natural selection or artificial selection? Because it's not the natural environment. However, it is natural selection because we never intended for that to happen.
Yeah,
so
we're
artificial
not deliberately
selection,
selecting for a trait on
right,
purpose. It's a natural
right,
reaction to our
yes,
artificial action.
Yes. So I think that might be where some of the confusion is coming from. But she's used completely the wrong term, and it just confuses things so much.
So fitness is based on the environment. So if you have an environment and a specific organism is fit for that environment, and you put it into a different environment, obviously it's going to be less fit for a different environment. But guess what? That's not relevant. Literally irrelevant. Fitness is, does an organism function in an environment better than a different environment? So there's no trade-off. There's no like more or less fit. It's all bullshit. It's based on its ability to survive in an environment. And so if you make it able to survive in one environment, like an environment with citrate and not other food sources, obviously if you put it into a different environment with different food sources, it's not fit for that environment. Literally just basic understanding of fitness here. Come on, TRock, come on.
Just want to clarify something. There's a lot of people in the audience saying, well, that is evolution, Jen. No, that's artificial selection. Okay, you take some of that antibacterial stuff, put it on your hands, that you are artificially selecting against, 99% of the bacteria on your hands, which then presumably might come back, to haunt you down the line. But that's not evolution. That's artificial selection. So another problem I wanted to bring up is that artificial selection, like the brassica stuff,
it's also evolution.
It happens at a really fast rate. Like we can actually observe it happening, through agriculture and stuff. Whereas if you look at the time span, the age of the planet, like I'm not a young Earth creationist. I accept the radioactive or radiometric data on the age of the planet. And that hasn't been that rate of change in the species,
Yeah. So she's confusing evolution with the mechanisms of evolution. So evolution has a number of mechanisms that's going to change the heritable characteristics, exactly what Ember said, change the heritable characteristics over time. What changes them is the mechanisms. So we have natural selection, we have artificial selection, we have sexual selection, we have genetic drift. There are all these mechanisms which contribute to how it changes. So when you say, that's not evolution, it's artificial selection. It's like saying, that's not a car, it's an engine. Like it is a function of the car. Like it's baffling that she, I don't know why she thinks artificial selection is different from evolution. It's baffling.
Yeah. It just, unfortunately, it's not that uncommon a misconception either. Like a lot of people have made the case, as you probably recall, there's been a great deal of kerfuffle over GMOs recently, in the past several years. And, whether it's a designer gene where we've used CRISPR to create something like insect-resistant corns, or it's old school selective trait breeding techniques that we used to create the other corn that exists today. It's all artificial selection. It's all causing changes in the species, resulting in evolution.
Evolution, yeah. Thank you so much for the super chat, Peebo Thulu. Was that who you were talking about, Peebo Thulu?
Yeah.
Great person. $5 dues, but if you tow the boat outside of the environment, it's all good, right? Since the front fell off. I cannot argue with that. I cannot even start to argue with that. Look, the front fell off this debate ages ago, quite frankly. So, the boat's in good company. So a boat will perform well in its environment. You drag it up to land, it's not going to perform very well at all. It's not just, it's not supposed to. But boats don't have offspring. So
I thought that's how we got submarines.
Sure.
Yeah.
Artificial selection happens very quickly.
So does natural selection. There are cases of natural selection where it happens just as quickly.
Well, the fossil record might not agree due to something called punctuated equilibrium.
Punctuated equilibrium is literally it happening in fast increments. It's the graduation is the one that you're thinking of. So yes, it does happen very quickly in natural
Punctuated
cases.
equilibrium is it doesn't change for a long time, then boom, almost like a quantum state transition hint, and then it stays the same for a long time, and then boom, it changes again. Yeah. That's punctuated equilibrium, and that's what the fossil record reflects.
In some cases.
To me, that's very different than something that we can witness happening. So it couldn't possibly be the same process because the scale of time in which it happens is so radically different.
Well, yeah, and
one second. In punctuated equilibrium, the changes happen over a very short period of time. Like there's no change for a long time, and then there's a lot of change very quickly that you can see happen. So punctuated equilibrium would be an example of like artificial selection for a single population or something. Those would be equivalently fast.
So yeah, he's got a point. But punctuated equilibrium isn't necessarily the model that we're using anymore. I don't think that's the model we're using. We're actually using integrated synthesis as the evolutionary model.
It's a relic of like 7th grade biology textbooks that later gets replaced with more refined information. There have been a couple isolated examples in the fossil record showing punctuated equilibrium. Often it's the result of sudden environmental change, like an ice age happens or a volcano takes away your island or something, and the species manage to survive by rapid adaptation. On a very, very few isolated cases, we can't identify an external characteristic, but even so, it could well be because natural selection is the non-random selection of random mutations that a species existed just fine for 100,000 years or more, and then a random mutation popped up that was so drastically beneficial it caused a cascade shift in the population.
Well, as far as I understand, and I could be wrong, but usually the rapid changes are a product of intense pressure, like evolutionary pressure, like so you mentioned a volcano or a predator comes into your neck of the woods. A predator has evolved to hunt you, and so it takes out a lot of the population, forcing that other population to evolve at a very rapid rate, or else they go extinct. So there are cases where a organism hasn't evolved to meet the challenge. They're not around anymore because they went extinct, and that's what happens.
If you don't punctuate, you're out of the race.
Yep. Game over. That's about basically what happens. So, this is again, Jen misunderstands the concepts. It's nothing new. As I said, she's the star of the show, and everybody loves her. But please read some biology and evolution.
You literally
Jen.
cannot argue with Jen.
Matthew Smicer also wanted to hear.
Okay, so depending on how you're feeling, this is sort of a bonus section of a couple of questions. I can leave it if you're feeling a bit tired. I was going to open the room up as well, which I will do because I did promise to. I'm sort of more inclined to open up the room, but I want to hear what you think, Ember.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. It's good to have more conversation and whatnot.
Absolutely.
We've kind of beaten this to death.
Just because this part has in the mouth to anus thing, which was actually hilarious kind of thing. So what I might do is just find that.
Yeah, that was a part of the debate that I definitely could have done without.
Jen, thoughts?
All right. Well, I was going to share the screen and just show, apple mushroom there. So Yeah, I'm really sorry. I need you to ask the question again. I'm just
Consciousness came from
boundary between boundary shape. The one number one is your undeviated mouth to rectum, as I mentioned earlier, separation, and then you can see how this shape number two is like a simplified version of number one, and then from three.
Yes, that's undeviated mouth to rectum. Undeviated.
On is how that shape deviates from through evolution. Matter accumulating in a body enables a deviation from the primordial mind, which then increases its efficiency, which you can approximate it as the amount of torque that is separating the mouth from the anus. Because if you look at something like a single
and none
cell,
of that even fucking makes sense. The amount of
I'm
torque
baffled.
separating the mouth
Right.
from the anus, like, what even are words at this point?
Look, I've occasionally had to do a number two, and I experienced a lot of torque. I don't know how this fits evolution.
it doesn't have a mouth. It doesn't have an anus. So those two things are delocalized within its body. And so the force of life is a localization of a separation between mouth and anus. So maybe there's a metaphor in there about, you know, getting your head out of your ass or something. I'm not sure, but thanks for listening. Hopefully that clears it up. I'm sorry it's hard to go in.
Oh, totally cleared it up. I'm totally clear now. I'm absolutely no. I'm gonna stop hassling Jen because I do like her. But yeah, that's Jen's mouth to anus presentation. Sure. Okay. Let's get some people in. If you do want to join, please do feel free. We are open to questions, comments, disagreements, agreements, laughs, jokes, anything that you want to come in with is perfectly fine. And I'll pin it so the world can see it.
Ooh, show off. Took me like half my shout out to get my window arranged so I could pin the stupid link.
Oh, really? Will I pop out the chat from the control panel in YouTube? I don't know. I just like that. I started doing that a while ago. I just like it like that. So,
yeah. But yeah, I mean, she's not entirely wrong. After all, we are basically earthworms. We're a tube with a digestive tract, and
yes.
we have accumulated matter around it. I rather enjoy accumulating matter. I wish I had the ability to customize my configuration of matter. I would definitely like to have gigantic freaking dragon wings so I could fly. That would be just the best. But, you know, we work with what we've got.
Okay, and I'll throw up a quick poll on who won the debate. It is a completely biased poll, and there's Rex. Good
hello,
to see
hello.
you. Hello.
Yeah.
Welcome to the stream. Do you have any thoughts on the debate or anything else, or any of the topics like evolution or creationism?
Well, I mean, it was a fun debate to watch, if slightly infuriating and headache-inducing at times.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, what caught my attention most at the start was, like, in their intros, Jen's was a whole mess of I don't even want to touch, but TRock barely addressed the topic of the debate at all. Like,
Yes,
most of
I agree.
his intro was just whining about geology.
Mm-hmm. And magnetic fields and planetary formations and just, you know, you kind of go to an evolution debate with the understanding that it is biological evolution. I don't think there's anybody sort of from the skeptical or science side that wouldn't go, okay, we're talking evolution. It's understood to be biological evolution. You know, we don't, when nobody's talking about like, well, I'm going to an evolution debate, I'll be talking about planetary evolution. It's just, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In semi-fairness to TRock, because I have seen his previous debates, he contends that evolution does happen. He just puts it on a much faster timescale so it can take place from Noah's flood till the present. I think he suspected that his opponents would be aware of that, so he couldn't argue anything about actual biological evolution without risking automatically losing. So he had to go to more esoteric concepts.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And Peebo Thulu, welcome to the stream. You know, I've known you from way back.
Peebo.
So
I thought TRock was channeling his inner Nephilim free Bukaki sort of stuff of just conflate the shite out of, like, here's a word, we will happily grab every concept connected to it to throw into this mix, so I can just when I hit a bump, I can just deflect off into these weeds until I hit the next bump, and then we're off down this creek, sort of thing.
So conflation of definitions, kind of thing, is what
intellectual Frogger.
Yeah,
intellectual Frogger. Wow. All right, I haven't heard that one before. I'm trying to pass that. Intellectual Frogger.
Wow. Yeah, that is a perfect description.
Just dodging the cars while you try to make it to the other side. I mean, I do admit that's kind of accurate for TRock, but I just find that he just sort of waffles on about stuff that is only tangentially related, but he thinks it is a solid connection, like a lot of non sequitur. Like, oh, there's a problem with this. Well, how does that get you to where you want to be? That's the way I feel about it.
But Mark,
it just doesn't connect the dots.
It looks like a maple leaf, though.
Exactly. That's a perfect example, Ember. Like, it looks like a maple, but how does that get to the same species being around for that amount of time?
Well, no, he was just holding that up as, look, I have a piece of evidence. Therefore, I'm right, even though what he's holding up is completely superfluous to the whole conversation. It's tangentially related. It's like, oh, I've successfully bounced into this creek. Here we go again.
It's Diogenes going, behold a man.
Yes.
I'm not gonna lie. Him saying, "Oh, this looks like a maple leaf," it just brought back flashbacks of who's that crazy mud fossil guy that's on
Mud Fossil University. Do you mean Howard Stirrup?
Yeah, Howard.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't tracked down that guy yet. I've heard references to him, but I haven't seen anything of his work.
It's horrific.
Look, that has got to be the weirdest debate I've done on Modern Day Debate, and that is a bold statement, but I'm going to stand by it. Like, sort of, so he'll go off into like rocks look like hearts, so they're hearts, and you can find them on the
that
thing.
Guy. Okay.
Yeah, and he went into what was it? Prince Charles is related to Dracula, and just like off the rails
dragons.
is not an
I think
adequate.
it was dragons.
Yeah, it was dragons, because it was Did Dinosaurs Exist? I think was the title of the debate, and I said afterwards, like, you didn't even attempt to do the topic, and it's so weird. Anyway, welcome to the stream. I'm so sorry I didn't welcome you earlier. You're always welcome. It's good to see you. Any comments?
Well, I'm just doing this for future. I'm just making sure you can even hear me. I've got satellite internet, and I'm not even sure if this is working. And this is more for a future sort of thing.
Satellites
so I don't know if
real. What are you talking about?
It's all balloons.
I work for NASA. Satellites aren't real. Come on.
I mean, you sound fine, but I think something's brushing up against your mic every now and then.
Probably my beard. I haven't shaved in like 47 years.
Wow. Just keeps making like a rustling noise.
Okay. Well, at least I have
That's right. You sound
some idea of how this will work. Okay. Besides my congestion.
Yeah, and the super chat comes vocals in from
5x5.
5x5. Super chat comes in from Jake Nelson for $10 again. Thank you so much, Jake. You're like putting me through college or something. Brilliant, chaps. Well done. Absolutely, chaps. Such a British name. I love
buying
that.
A new car.
Yes,
what are you talking about?
Oh, mate. I don't know. I must admit, I would love an electric car. That would be awesome. Some person in my block has one, and I'm always jealous when I pass it. I'm like, oh,
They're
And I'm
bloody
sure
that
it's a
lethal.
seems
Prius.
so cool.
They're terrible.
Sorry,
The electric cars.
I
They're
said, I'm sure it's a
fucking
Prius.
lethal.
Sorry.
they're lethal.
Fuck yeah. Oh,
How are
sorry.
they lethal?
So, have you ever been on a curb and you don't hear one go by because there's no engine noise and you barely hear the
Oh.
road rubber of the? They need like some artificial "Hey, I'm here" noise, like an artificial engine noise, so that you can hear the bloody things coming.
Yeah, I don't
They're
know.
ninjas.
I'm more
You
I'm
paint
more a
them black.
visual
You
person.
take the lights off, and in the dark, they're gonna get you.
Especially
who's
when they're
driving
on
around with
auto
their
drive.
lights off? Yeah, well, I mean, but who's driving around with their lights off? Like
That was
these
a
problems
analogy
are
as a
sort of.
thing.
Yeah, no, I get you. I get you.
automatic
I don't know. I'm a
emissions?
visual person, so I always look. I'm always looking. So I'm based on visual. If you're an auditory person, I can imagine that would be a problem. I don't get too concerned because I look rather than listen so much.
Well,
Yeah.
my workspace has lots of traffic, and you hear a truck.
Mhm.
If you're used to that sort of noise, you don't hear the electric cars coming in behind them.
Why aren't you looking? Why aren't you looking? Like the
Because
first
there's
thing
a
you're taught
big
when you're a kid.
motherfuck off truck. It's a
Oh,
big-
okay.
It kind of gets your attention, and like, oh shit, car, fuck.
Okay.
I mean, kind of related to that.
Sorry to
My
derail.
day job. I'm a bus driver. The two absolute worst types of drivers that I see every day. One are dudes with huge trucks, which go figure. The other is anyone driving a soccer mom van. It's like they always think they're drag racing everywhere.
Every so
I
often,
think
I get my hands on a soccer mom van. I actually enjoy them because there's room for both the kids, and I usually have like at least 2 totes full of photography stuff. But they keep breaking on me. They're depending on the brand. Sometimes it's the radiator, sometimes it's the transmission, but they just don't hold up as well as sedans. I don't know.
Yeah.
So on the mention of traffic, I'm just going to share something local to me, which is very important and very very personal and everything. So this is the Bell Tower Times, which is the foremost news thing in Australia, in Western Australia, sorry, in Perth particularly, where I am. So the Bayswater Bridge is being shut down. So this is a tribute to the Baysy Bridge, which is the hungriest girl in the state. The amount of trucks that have hit this bridge is astonishing. This is not a sort of occurrence that is unusual. Yeah, so they're shutting down the hungry Baysy Bridge. Just thought I'd share that. And
So we've got one as well.
Yeah, there's one very near me too, in Liverpool,
really?
right next to Syracuse. It's
Mm-hmm.
it eats a truck at least once a week, and usually more often. And it's got
Nice.
13 freaking signs on the way in, like flashing lights, and if you hit this
Right,
sign, you'll
right.
hit that bridge, and everything you can and people are like, well, why don't they like do something about it? But the thing is, with this bridge, and it's probably true in some form or fashion with these other hungry bridges, is it's a railroad bridge right next to a body of water. So you can't dig the road
Can't
down
help it, yeah.
because it'll flood
Mhm.
immediately. And you can't remove the bridge or raise it up because in order to, the railroad has to go by. In order to raise it, you'd have to increase a grade for like 10 miles in each
Yes.
direction. It's freaking crazy. But
There's-
everyone knows it's there, and people still hit it all the time.
Yeah, there's a bridge that actually has its own camera, and I can't remember the name of it. I watch it every now and then. And in that bridge is it's in America. So the locals who live nearby actually have cameras set up to watch the bridge, and then they share the account, and so they're making money off this bridge, ripping the. But that particular bridge, which I wish I could remember the name, they did raise it. They did get huge cranes in because they filmed the whole operation,
Well,
and they
that's a
lifted.
shame.
And it's a rail, and as you say, it's a railway bridge on top, and so they're picking up the railway. They're picking up almost the rail bedding as well, and I think they managed to raise it only inches, but it's like a freaking piece of railway that they're picking up to raise, and even with that, still takes this and warnings. Whoomp, under they go, rip. Caravans. Caravans in the States, they tend to lose the air conditioning unit off the top. So the body goes under, but because they've got the air conditioning unit on the top, that comes off.
Wow. Yeah, right. So that sort of whirly thing on the top that does the air conditioning, right?
No. And like what are the Americans call the camper vans that are trucks? RVs?
Yeah, RVs.
Yeah, well, some of those they've obviously not happy with the environmental system, so they've mounted extra air cons on the roof.
Oh, we do that with some of our school buses too.
Yeah, and so they go onto this bridge, and the bus fits. Quick. Sorry to derail.
Oh yeah, Beams just sent me a video of it. Do you want to see this in action?
Ooh, that sounds fun.
Sure. It sounds smashing, darling.
Smashing, chaps. See a bridge eat a truck. What?
We're all very disturbed.
But yeah, well, I mean, everybody knew that before they got here. Let's face it. They knew what they were signing up for.
Oh, you can see him even slowing down too. Ooh.
Yoink, yoink. Very nice, very nice.
All right, keep going, mate. Keep going.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you may as well. What are you going to do? Back up?
You're committed now. Oh, he's stopping. All right. Is he stopping?
I mean, good on him for getting clear of it, I guess.
Oh, no.
Another perspective.
Yeah, as I said, you've got the two apartments that share the camera view.
Yeah.
I can't tell. Is the roof of the camper dragging across the bridge after that?
No. It just nicely removed the AC units off the top, and all the rest.
The bar did its job and protected the actual bridge.
Yep. One day a camper van will evolve with no AC units. I hate the creationists sort of go, oh, but a car's designed and there's like amphibious vehicles, which is between a car and it's like, yeah, and when you can get them to breed and produce different cars, then maybe you'll have a point. But the analogy is terrible. It's a terrible analogy.
Well, to them, it seems to make sense because the watchmaker argument makes sense. It's like, artificial design things and not design things are all design things. So we can't tell them apart. So we may as well make a car analogy because all these things are the same.
And I mean, I can't agree with mechanical stuff, but like a lot of programs use stuff we know about evolution to make themselves better. It's pretty cool.
You mean like machine learning kind of stuff? Like they integrate evolutionary stuff. Yeah, absolutely. These are the principles that we kind of learn as we go along, and sort of so we can put into practice these experiments where it relies on evolution to produce the fittest for that environment. We can I mean, we've done amazing things like bacteria that can eat oil and stuff like that. Sort of things that can adapt to an environment and thrive, and the byproduct is they do things for us like eat oil that we can't clean up it otherwise. So all of this stuff, it's based upon evolutionary principles. And a question that I love to ask creationists is, what practical implementation or what have you discovered about reality that comes from your creationist model? Right. So we have these things that we discover about the universe, about reality, about how things work, how organisms populate, how sort of things collide with one another, chaos. It's just tons of things. Science has billions of them. That you could point to. What has creationism actually discovered that's new about the universe?
I don't know about that, but I know that there's at least a guy, because I've seen some of the other person's YouTube channel on him, who's a creationist who goes around spruiking to other creationists about how he's got a working creation-based like geology model. Hey, give him money and he'll go off and strike oil for you, which he never does. He just keeps moving on with his targets.
He has a bridge to sell us.
Yeah, that's not really creationism, and just
but
that's called a scam.
But he's using creationism to defraud creationists.
Well, yeah,
and
but he's not a.
The weird thing is, well,
he's a
kind of
scam
think
artist.
he is. No, I think he's just deluded. No, because I think he
these are not
believes in what he's doing.
exclusive.
He keeps putting up. It's like the water diviners of why didn't you find the Dick Smith water test? Why didn't you find the water on this test? Oh, because of all your negative energy. Well, Mr. Creationist Geologist, why didn't you find oil? Oh, because of this reason or that reason, or
right.
It's the same as with psychics. It's always excuses.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But it's just there are creationists spruiking this shit.
And just speaking of like creationists and geology, just take a Geo 100 course at any university. There's no way of like Noah's flood could ever have happened.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's odd because Answers in Genesis and Creation Ministry, they do have a couple of geologists. One did go on Modern Day Debate, which was David McQueen, and he went up against who'd he go up against? He went up against, I'm forgetting his name. God, that's going to drive me nuts. I saw that
debate. I think he has been on there 2 or 3 times.
Who, David McQueen or the other guy?
Dave McQueen. I forget who he was up against. I remember
kind of got
I sent a couple of super chats one time when he was on. I guess he maybe has a degree, but he doesn't talk like it.
He definitely does. There's no doubt that he does. There's some things that he does know what he's talking about, like, sort of rock formations and things like that. It's just, you don't know how he got to the point. Like, at the point where your faith is sort of overriding, so this is the thing about Creation Ministries. When you look at their goal, hello, Nara. Welcome to the stream. I'll get you in 1 second. I just want to make this point. When you look at Creation Ministries and their goal, it is to acknowledge God as the creator of the universe. It isn't to find the truth. It isn't to, when science we go, well, we want to find out what's factually correct or understand reality kind of thing. No, it's to acknowledge God first and foremost. So that overrides everything else. It's kind of a bit worrying. Hello, Nara. Welcome to the stream. Do you have anything to say about the debate or, the topics we've been talking about? Evolution, creationism?
Oh, well, I mean, I had a ton of things to say, but I have spent the last 15, 20 minutes or so trying to figure out how to work StreamYard. So what I have to say now probably won't seem so relevant, but maybe I can jump in for future things.
Well, I mean, if you want to, revisit something, I'm more than happy to. That's fine. That's not a problem.
I was reminded of
thank
Joseph
you,
Smith.
It was King Crocodile.
Somebody was just talking about the guy who was trying to find oil. I reminded of Joseph Smith with his seeing rocks. Just another big scammer.
Right. Yeah, that's a bit of a weird one. Moroni, the angel, giving him the gold plates, and nobody could see the plates kind of thing. It was sort of, when people went, oh, well, if you've got these gold plates, show us them, and he's like, no, you can't see them or else a god will take them away or something. It's kind of, you kind of wonder how people can fall for these scams. Like, how could you possibly think that is tenable, that somebody looking inside of a hat that won't show you it?
Well, there's always the
Right, yeah.
what's the term where so you basically have the guy that rocks into town. He's the snake oil salesman. He rocks in, sets his stuff up, gathers the crowd, makes his claims, and then someone in the crowd validates him. They're like, "Oh yes, blah blah blah," and then everyone goes, "Oh, well, here's a witness that seems not connected and credible," and so that gives validation. Off he goes, and once one's in and others are in, well, now you've got a whole group, and now you're all in with mates. You can't back down because you're all committed, without anyone realizing that the first person to put their hand up is being paid to sell the. There's the other study that was done of. So you'll have like 3 vendors, and then if a person stops at one of those vendors, then because that one customer has stopped, other customers will gravitate towards that vendor and not the other vendors. And I'm pretty sure they've done like a study on the psychology of that.
Oh, I'm sure they have, and sort of there's that. There's a lot of human interactions that are very, very strange. Like, people don't want to take the last one of something, in a shop kind of thing, because they think there's something wrong with it. So it'll just sit there for ages, even though it's perfectly fine. And a lot of this behavior is really, really strange. And you're right. If people do see something as popular, of course we'll go for it. We kind of assume that the mob knows what they're doing, which there's no reasonable evidence why that should be the case.
And quite a bit of
welcome, Hungry Bridge. I've got a feeling that's actually been
madness of crowds.
But welcome to all our bridge friends out there. And do you have anything to say about the debate or the topics that we've been going over?
I've got to learn how to run OBS through StreamYard so I can do that kind of
I
crap.
can do it a bit. I can do it a bit. I really haven't sort of tested it to its limit kind of thing. But that's okay. I mean, I forgot bridges can't talk, so that's completely on me. That one's on me, guys.
They can eat, though.
Yeah. They can certainly eat. Absolutely.
Nom,
and we have to thank them for bringing us together.
Hey, maybe the drivers of these trucks are not praying hard enough to the hungry bridge god, because after all, the bridge actually exists, so it's one step up on the god of your choice,
and it does W.
If I had my way,
it's a
I would make all cars automated, every single one. And all trucks automated, all transport systems automated, network them up into a massive traffic control system, and you just put in where you want to go and let the car handle it.
That's evolving. That's happening.
Yeah. If I had my way, that would be implemented, with no manual control at all.
The bugs out
Humans
first, with unintended consequences and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry?
Have a friend who was a car salesman, and they were spruiking one of the latest, greatest Mercedes in one of the roads around the area, which is heavily industrialized. Anyway, on the demo drive, where my mate's the passenger and the person who's getting a feel for the Mercedes, so the traffic has stopped quickly because of whatever reason down the road. Now, the driver, he's not familiar with the car, he's looking to buy. He does hit the brake, but the Mercedes that he's in with the sensors does all the calculations and basically says, at this rate of deceleration, we will not stop before impact. And so the seatbelt's tight. The seatbelt's all tightened on them. The windows all popped up. The whole safety thing kicked in. They didn't hit the car in front, but it was like gnats petuna distance. But the safety systems, they're coming. It's just like there's
Yeah.
some of the Teslas that have unfortunately, unintentionally had accidents. It's been other factors like false readings into the sensors and all that sort of thing. So
yeah.
And then with aircraft, like, well, they still stick to the you take off from here, you fly down this corridor, and you get to your destination. But planes with the technology and that, they're generally smart enough to know where all the aircraft are around them. There's no real reason to keep them to those corridors. It's just the current mode of operation. Like the people
Well,
aren't.
it's what humans can cope with.
Yeah.
You know, that's what
Yeah.
humans, they're there so humans can organize them. Yeah.
Yeah, but at some stage, eventually, like the planes will take off and make their best journey, given all the data that's coming into them, to their destination, and then join the holding pattern to land, sort of thing.
Well, I think it's this idea that sort of machines are unreliable, humans are reliable. Like we kind of put across this thing of, we have this intrinsic thought that, oh, if a human's not in control, it's bad, you know, and there's nothing to suggest that humans are more reliable than machines, like computer systems.
But I think that holdover comes from the 2 centuries that we've been building really large I'm going to kill you machines. Like your average steam press back in the 1800s, it did not give a rat's petunia about you. You put your hand in the wrong spot, it's gone. Modern machinery, with you know, we've gotten better at making them. It's harder to put your hand where you shouldn't and stuff like that. And so I think our cultural sort of growth is not keeping up with our technological sort of the pace, because that's accelerating. You know, 5 years ago, 3D printers were this, you saw them on New Scientist sort of thing. Now, if you can buy one flat packed in a box and make a plastic one, industry is going to, no, let's make a plane out of 3D parts. Let's make, not quite that big, but there's the company that's 3D printed the whole rocket. You know, they're moving from plastic to metals to ceramics. Yeah. Technology's changing.
I thought it was funny when a 3D printer printed a 3D printer. I thought that was awesome. That was a little bit scary, because you're like, well, if we hook this up to an AI, couldn't that mean that the AI could print another AI kind of thing? But
was it a functional 3D printer?
Yep.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh yeah. And so you've got, as I was saying to Ember, I think about like being old, and my concept of phone has not kept up with technology. And so younger people say, hey, remember you can do this with your phone. And I go, oh shit, yeah, I can. Because phones when I were a lad were Bakelite and bolted to the wall. Nowadays, they can fly to the moon if you put a rocket up them.
So bringing it back to evolution, technological integration, what is people's thoughts on technological integration into the human evolution? So the idea that, you know, you'll have some sort of computer in your brain.
It's not going to make it. Oh, yeah, I don't think it's going to make it.
What do you mean by that?
So, when you say technology, you also throw in the implied silicon. No?
Well, not necessarily.
Years. But that's what came across. And I don't think the machine side of things are going to make it in time, because I think CRISPR technology, biotechnology, is going to supersede it, supplant it.
Okay.
Like,
so you think that sort of genetic technology will be bioengineering our computing devices rather than manufacturing?
Yeah. Well, it depends. Like, so now I'm going to say the word quantum, and show the audience that I'm a complete fuckwit.
Everyone take a drink. Yeah.
Yes, everyone take a drink. Quantum. So quantum computing is potentially a thing, which is like you're playing with the scale of atoms, and it's weird science. So will we be able to biologically grow that? Probably not. But will we be able to like reverse engineer? And I think bird brains have the highest density of neurons per volume. Now, will we be able to bioengineer that aspect back into us or things? What's the changing species if we? I don't know the density of bird brain to human brain, but if we packed bird neuron density into the human brain, is there a cross correlation?
I mean, sort of related to that. I don't remember where I heard this, but it was a really interesting discussion. Like right now, we have the technology where you could get a sample of a fetus's DNA and tell if they're going to be born with any sort of genetic disorders or propensity towards them. So the question is, should you use gene editing technology to stop those disorders from manifesting?
Yes.
But that then kind of leads you on to, I have a culture that deems this particular trait also defective. Like an overgeneralization is in China with the one-child policy. They've skewed their population towards males. That's a really primitive application of that.
Yes, that definitely was a
downside.
Unintended outcome of the one-child policy. Yes, but they've actually taken away that policy, so you should see an equilibrium come back.
Not if they don't join Russia and Ukraine, it all goes to shite. But anyway.
Well, I mean, hypotheticals aside, like if we expect to see just over 50% female in any population without those controls, eventually, the population of higher males is going to reach a stable place, basically.
I mean, that's
like
kind
aside
of what
from
populations do. They tend
Yeah.
to equivalent. I can't speak. They tend to equalize given enough time. I mean,
Yeah.
you could sort of say the population evolves.
Oh no, I just
to
brought it
its
up as a
environment.
bolstering sort of example to Theros with the.
Well, I
sorry,
think
as
that-
a counterpoint to that, in that, yes, it's good technology. Yes, I would love to go back in time and fix the shallow end of the gene pool that I got. But then there's the unintended consequences of, using the H word, we only want blonde hair and blue eyes. That sort of creepy thing coming in.
Well, I think that's a slippery slope argument. I think that addressing illnesses and things that are deficient in the genes does not necessitate making aesthetic choices to a child or to a egg or embryo or whatever you have.
Go ahead.
I want to go on to sort of say it's kind of, in my opinion, it is necessary for us to do so. And the reason why is evolution. It's because we've basically stifled evolution because people that would have been without technology weeded out, sort of, so somebody with certain type of genetics that have problems that asthma and things like that, they might not have survived before current technology. The fact that they don't get sort of die is like they're getting put back into the gene pool, and so those genes are being carried on. Now, aside from, I think you mentioned eugenics kind of thing, and I am certainly not in favor of that. I think that that's absolutely terrible. But what we can do is genetically manipulate the gene to remove that from the pool that's naturally going to be harmful to the well-being of our people.
Oh, true. But then do we fix the vitamin C problem?
Sure, why not?
Mm-hmm.
So the the place where this argument goes is just, where do you stop with improving the human animal as a whole? Like,
Right. And what does improvement
You
mean?
never.
well, you were just talking about neuron density from birds. Like, why not improve our brain's capacity to learn or process information? Why
And
not give
Ember
us stronger
mentioned in a
muscles so we don't have to
previous
rely
stream
on
about
technology
crops.
as much? Fix needing glasses or hearing issues.
Well, I think that we really need to look at the outcomes and sort of really be careful and err on the side of caution when it comes to applying these things. We've got no way of really knowing at the moment whether changing something might change a lot of things for the worse kind of thing. So we really, knowledge in this case of what we are actually doing. And we're nowhere near ready to do that. That's the thing. Like, the knowledge that we need before we even start to attempt to do this is so far down the track that, I won't see it in my lifetime. There's no way. I don't know if anyone's young. They might see it. But I think it's so far down the track that at the moment we're just saying, hey, we're collecting information. We're finding out what genes cause what. I mean, we've in sort of, time scale, we've only just mapped the human genome. It was only done less than half a century ago. That's nothing. So we're just beginning to understand.
Just a point though, in the same
Yeah.
sort of time frame. So the Wright brothers with their bicycle shop, Kitty Hawk or whatever the beach was, in that time frame, we went to the moon, mate.
Yeah.
Yes, but
So
the
the genetic bit you're talking about, dropping that, and this is about a bad analogy, but dropping that into the same time frame, our genetics is already at the sop with camel level of stuff.
Yeah, so I
Love
wouldn't
the
make a
Sopwith.
distinction
That's also,
between.
yeah.
I wouldn't make a distinction, but sort of try and make them analogous to genetic manipulation of our own DNA to building something external. It's a totally different. I mean, I understand. Sorry.
Time frame. Like you're saying,
Yes, but
we've only been doing
is
X for 50 years. Well,
insanely complicated. One is insane. Like, genetics is insanely complicated compared to firing something with jet fuel out the end and propelling it somewhere. Like, you're not talking about the same
an
kind of
aeronautical
thing.
engineer, but
it
I would
depends on the
disagree.
person.
Like I've met rocket scientists, and that's why they say it's rocket science.
Yeah, no,
like
I'm not saying it's easy,
the
but what I'm
theory
saying is
of
that the
turbines
computer.
goes back into the 1820s. It
But
took
the
till
computer they used for the moon landing couldn't even hold the information about one genetic code, and there's millions of billions of genetic codes.
That's a part of the rocket. I'm saying the technology. I'm trying to use the growthing technology in both fields synonymously, not parts of.
Well, I don't care. You're making an analogy between the two, and what I'm saying is that genetics is so much more advanced than rocketry. I don't think it's fair to compare the two.
Okay, so what technology is more complicated than genetics, if you've got one?
Quantum technology, perhaps.
Perhaps.
Okay.
I mean, how are you quantifying complexity?
Well, just in sheer amounts of information that you would need in order to implement a practical solution to some sort of problem. Sorry, I don't know how long you've been waiting. I'll add space aliens? Question mark. Have you got anything to say about the debate or anything that we're talking about here?
I understand that in space, no one can hear you scream.
Oh,
Maybe
Scott
no one can
Manley's
hear you
done a
at all.
thing on that. Yes, you can, technically. It's really weird.
Yeah,
It becomes ultrasound. Infrasound?
Ultrasound.
Infra, really, really low frequency.
Oh, okay. Well, that kind of makes sense since it's not a
Well,
perfect
Because space is
vacuum.
not completely
Yeah.
empty. Even
Yeah,
and
Well-
then you've got
you'd need to have
quantum particles. So
really low
technically,
frequency.
Oh,
that's
okay.
what Scott Manley goes
Right.
into. Yeah.
So, if you had a sensitive
Sorry.
enough sensor, you might be able to hear someone scream in space. But could
I'm
a
very
human
sensitive.
being hear someone screaming in space?
Yeah, probably not. No.
So I've speculated about this a bit. I'm like, so because the whole problem with no screaming in space is because of the air thing. But if you're in space, you're probably in a spaceship where there's air. If you have a buddy with you, they will hear you. If you don't have a buddy with you, I should hope you brought a radio with you. So
And it came
people
from
can hear
Alien,
you.
which they were always in a ship. I just want to
Yes.
back you up on this. Like Alien, they were always in a ship. So that
And
Ridley
even
Scott,
when they weren't, they were on a planet with an atmosphere.
Well, I mean,
well,
by
not the
the
original Alien.
by the same
Yeah,
logic,
they were.
humans can't breathe underwater, but we can breathe in a submarine that is underwater. So humans can breathe underwater.
Mm-hmm. That
Yeah, I'm
checks out.
not finding these arguments convincing, but yeah.
Adventures
No,
and things.
I don't know. I get what Peebo's saying about the rocket ship. I just think DNA and sort of understanding not only DNA but what affects what and what the implications of sort of epigenetics and all of this kind of stuff. It's just insanely complicated.
Oh yeah, yeah. Unintended consequences for sure for the win.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. But I still think that it's where humans have to progress. It's the out to that kind of degradation of the genome through not allowing evolution to take its course on human. Actually, I mean, humans will still evolve. There's just other things that will govern it.
Yeah, we've just changed the selection pressures. Like it's no longer
Idiocracy,
about
anyway.
eyesight or diabetes. It's
right.
How well do you boogie or something? How much
socioeconomic.
is your wallet?
How much money you have? Whether you can afford a Lambo.
Ages ago, and I wish I could remember the authors. So I read a science fiction novel, and within the setting, total, like what got you over the line to, and I'm trying to remember because it's ages, what got you over the line as to be accepted into the society was there's a term, and actors and actresses have it. So the symmetry of your face, the symmetry of your face and your overall body. And so in this society, the closer to perfect symmetry you had, that got you over the line. And of course, they're constantly revising that standard to get closer and closer and closer to perfect symmetry.
And the golden ratio and things.
Yeah. And that was the plot hook to get the character who didn't meet that, to get over that line, to rope them into actually carrying on the storyline of the book. But I'm saying, so selection pressures, sexual selection pressures can be based on weird things like that, not just the size of your antlers.
Well, I mean, I love the premise of Idiocracy. I absolutely adored that premise.
That movie scares me.
Yeah, that movie is like, I mean, I think that the movie was pretty good. I didn't think it was amazing, but the premise itself just was amazing premise that if intelligent people don't breed as much and sort of stupid people breed more, then that is what will be selected for, kind of thing. Very, very fascinating concept.
Well, technically, if they produce more offspring, then yes. Because then that shifts the demographics is probably the wrong word. I'm stupid. But that shifts things in ever their favor.
Yeah. I mean,
it's not survival of the fittest; it's the survival of the sprogger.
It's the survival of the good enough, is how I've heard it explained. Like you just have to be able to pass the bar and pass on your genes.
Yes, because that's what fitness is.
Yep, sufficiently fit is equivalent to superior fitness or whatever, however you want to look at that. As long as you successfully do the thing, evolution gives zero fucks about you after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's kind of odd because, and what gets me about creationists is they don't think we can go extinct. They think there's a magic man that's going to come and save us if things, get bad, or there will be a time where things will get bad, and some magical man can save us. And as
one more
atheist,
reason religion is so dangerous, because
right.
climate change, and people are like, oh, it's fine if the world ends, God will just save us all. It's like, no, you have to do something about it.
Yeah, that's why Musk's building a big silver dildo.
With that said, especially with our current numbers, even in the, well, maybe not the worst case scenario, but unless it is the absolute worst case scenario, I don't foresee a near future where humanity could go fully extinct. Like, our society as we know it, definitely, but I feel like humans would still survive somewhere.
Yes.
I think that
there's still a few Aboriginal tribes that would survive.
Well,
I'm
we're
not
spread
sure about
arsehole
that.
to breakfast on the place.
Hang on. I'm not sure about that, actually, because if Yellowstone blows as a super volcano, it may end humanity, kind of thing. There may be, like, I'm not saying this is for sure or anything like that, but it is possible. If we're hit by a sufficiently big asteroid, I think it was 2019 OK, was an asteroid that came between us and the moon.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it was okay because it did miss us, but it came closer to us than the moon is away from us. On a universe level, that's like a bullet grazing your arm kind of thing. Like, it was so close. And I said, hang on a second, hang on, I haven't finished yet. That had the possibility of wiping out all of humanity. It was that big. So there are possible things that could happen, which is why we're landing, landers on comets and asteroids and seeing how far we can push them away. We're doing stuff about this. And that's why it's frustrating to see flat earthers going, no, it's all fake. Because we're like, yeah, we're trying to help us here. Like, sorry, go ahead. Whoever's next.
The existential dread build up on what Mark was saying is go watch Scott Manley, where he's done a couple of really good episodes, because he's also connected with the asteroid watching international group. So he's got some really good things on. Yeah, there's been a lot more since then, because we're getting better at finding them, and we're finding a lot more than we kind of notice, and it's a scary we're living in a shooting gallery sort of thing.
Yes.
Of rocks whizzing past us. And then I can't remember the asteroid that they landed on to bring the samples back, but the thing that freaked them out the most was most of them are not solid. They're just floating bean bags of pebbles. And so poor old Bruce Willis, he ain't gonna blow one of these things up. He's gonna make it worse with that sort of idea. So
that does
go ahead, Theros. I know you
render some possibilities, though. Like what was the dart test? How we actually got more change in the velocity of the target asteroid because of the ejecta generated than from the force of the impact itself. If many of them are these beanbag kind of things, we wouldn't even necessarily have to do the whole crash a probe at super stupid high speed kind of thing. Just get a probe nearby, punch a hole in the beanbag, and the ejecta will move it enough.
Yeah,
but you've got to see it first and do the plots and get it out there. Sorry, Theros.
Yeah, just bring a big old bomb or something, or a mass driver.
I'm going to go to Theros because you've been trying to talk for a while. So
I was just trying to say, I was talking about all but the worst case scenario. There are things that could cause us to go extinct, but I'm not 100% sure humanity has the power to cause itself to go completely extinct.
Ooh, yeah.
At present,
if we go grab an asteroid and deliberately bring it here,
I've seen the Omega Man.
That would strongly disagree. I think humanity is the most probable to make humanity to go extinct in the present.
Possibly. Nuclear war.
Because we know there's
definitely is a
no asteroid.
possibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, Nara,
Absolutely.
go
Oh no,
ahead,
if there's a
go ahead.
nuclear war, the Aussies are going to win because we've got Mad Max. You'll lose. Yay.
There you go.
There's also bioweapons. If we make a sufficiently deadly plague, it doesn't have to get everybody, just enough of us that the rest of us don't survive for another generation.
Oh no, here's another existential thing. It's worse than that. So because we're going out and moving into more and more areas where there weren't humans, we're coming across more and more pathogens, which gives more and more chances for zoononic events to happen. And because we've got such a wonderful, good transport system, then you can potentially get multiple different of these zoononic. Basically, you can get one invading organism into our.
Happen.
That's it. Yes, you get that happening in multiple spots, and then crossing over, because once this organism, virus, bacteria is already in a human, and you get another organism that's also in a human, then they're already compatible with the human biology, so there's nothing stopping them crossing over into each other. And so you get Ebola meeting up with COVID, and we're all going to just deliquesce.
My favorite end of humanity scenario is the cordyceps thing. I don't know how the TV show did it, but there's a book called The Girl with All the Gifts.
Yes.
Yep.
Ember, you just got like 200% cooler, mate. I have read that book, The Girl with All the Gifts, and the other one, The Boy on the Bridge, I think it is. Absolutely awesome books written in first person from the cordyceps zombie virus perspective. Just
Ooh, that
so
sounds
good.
fascinating.
Oh, so good.
It's fantastic.
You know, I think the TV show maybe didn't work. I never saw the TV show. I heard it was complete crap. But I think it probably didn't work because it wasn't that first-person experience seen through the eyes of the zombie, basically. So imagine it as book.
And there's so many social implications too, like why does everyone hate me? What did I do wrong? And the inability to control instincts. And then there's those wonderful asides with the super racist doctor who ends up saving the day / ruining the day.
Yeah, there was a short story I read once. It was in a collection of doomsday stories. Funny enough, but yeah, there was one where this man was he had a hallucination that he had to try and get a neighbor down from a light pole, but in the end it turned out he was infected with cordyceps and he was climbing up higher so it could spread.
Oh wow.
Oh, that gives me shivers.
So
that's really good. I like, if you could find me that story, I'd really like it. Like,
it's somewhere on my Kindle account.
It's okay. It's all right, mate. It's fine. I'll try and find it. That sounds amazing. You know, and I haven't been reading
we want
as
to
much
build
as I
buildings
used to.
taller.
Yeah, Tower of Babel was cordyceps in action.
Well, I was thinking the thing in Arabia.
Oh, the Burj Khalifa.
Oh, yeah, Burj Khalifa.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they want to build taller than that, so we're already infected. It's already happening.
Yeah. There's talk
I
in
don't
China
know what
of building something 3 times taller, not to be outdone by those capitalists.
I hate to see the bird that's going to eat us up there, but you know, that aside, yeah.
Oh, you end up with something like Cthulhu coming in because it's attracted.
Cthulhu. Actually, that would be a cool end of the world scenario if Cthulhu suddenly arose from the depths and we went, wow, Lovecraft was actually right. Wow, that's insane. Like that would be kind of odd.
That's another series of books. Shit. I can't think of the author's name, Lovecraft? But there's sort of, yeah. It's the author is actually Lovecraft's like grandson, and apparently, yeah, it's something like that. The first one is like called 14. It's like a hotel room kind of thing. The second one is called The Fold, and it's a standalone novel, but it's in the same universe as the first one. And then there's a few others, but Yeah, basically people keep messing with reality. They find the next universe over and oops, Cthulhu.
Peter Klein's, apparently.
That's
Peter Klein's.
it. I love these stories. They are so well written.
Okay.
Klein's is just so good. And of course, the horrible beasts out of Nightmare are that's always a plus too. But it's so creepy and you like find out the mystery. It's one of the few thrillers that you can actually reread, or at least I can actually reread.
Right. That's awesome. No, I love it. I might. I'm sorry to call it early. I do want to have lunch at some point, so I do apologize. But I'm gonna call it. We've talked about evolution. We've dissected this debate pretty damn well, I think. Look, this was something new that I'm trying out. I really hope you all enjoyed it. I really do. I'll be back on my Wednesday, which is Tuesday night. It's my Monday, which is Sunday night for everybody else Eastern time. So I hope I'm not confusing everyone. So Eastern time, Tuesday night, I'll probably be opening up membership and have some emojis that we can have fun with, because I'm weird and my emojis are going to be weird. You can guarantee that. So, but I want to thank everyone for joining me. Thank you to Theros and Anara, Peebo Thulu, Space, and Hungry Hippo. I mean Bridge. Hungry Bridge. So good to see you all. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank the audience. And I want to give a big special thanks to Ember for being here. Amazing job again. I know I'm just gushing over you, but for a first debate, I don't think I've seen as good a first debate for anybody, quite frankly. So absolute props for you. You definitely won that. Oh, I did a poll, didn't I? Wait on a second. I totally forgot about that. Even though I rigged the poll, and look, I rigged the poll. Let's face it, I 100% rigged it. But Ember still won. I rigged it against him, and Ember still won over Mouth to Anus. And
well,
then
that's
TJump
pretty impressive.
And then TRock. Well, I think Jen did better than TRock. I mean, I've never said that a lot. I usually completely disagree with her over everything, but TRock was terrible. And TJump, last minute, he did fine. And, you'd expect someone with his amount of debates under his belt to do fine. So, kudos to TJump as well. Congratulations. But yeah, thank you so much, everybody. Be kind to yourself and kind to one another. So thank you. And till next time. Adios.
Good one.